attendants, applicants. Welcome to this meeting of Derbyshire Dales Planning Committee held here in the Town Hall in Matlock on Tuesday 8th of April 2025. Just by way of information for members of the public, we don't have a fire practice alarm programme for this evening, so if the alarm does go off, please make your way out through the fire exit, which is double doors behind you, another one to my left up here, as quickly as possible. With toilets are two sets of toilets down the stairs by the entrance where you came in, or if you go out through those doors to the left, there's a toilet down there. We do have water available if you feel need to quench your thirst. There's a machine just out in the corridor there, so do feel free to avail yourselves of that. Just before we start the formal meeting, just to remind fellow committee members that there is an election, I'm told, on May the 1st this year, so we are officially in purdah, so please be circumspect in any comments you may make. Please respect the traditions of purdah. Right, to introduce people on the members on the table, members and officers here. My name is Councillor Peter O'Brien. I represent the Hathersage wards on the District Council, and I'm chairing this evening's meeting. Got Councillor Sue Barefoot on my right, who is the Vice Chair of the Planning Committee. We've got planning officers with us, Sean Robson on my right here. This is actually his final Planning Committee with us here. So thank you, Sean, for all you've done over the past months, and best luck on your new adventures. Miles Joyce, to Sean's right, on his right, Edward Vording, on Edward's right, Chelsea Johnston. To my left, from our legal services, we've got Kerry France, who's a legal services manager, and we've got John Ramsey, who's from our democratic services. On my left, John will be keep us on the straight and narrow and make sure everything is recorded. Right, we've got 4 applications to consider this evening, but before we get on to that, we've just got a few items of business to get through, the first of which is apologies for absence. Please, John.
Thank you, Chair. We've had apologies from Councillor John Boynton, Councillor Bob Butcher and Councillor Neil Buttle. Acting as substitute on behalf of Councillor John Boynton, we have Councillor Gareth G.
Sorry, Gareth, I didn't you want to come and sit at the front, Gareth, when you're all happy there? Okay. No. Okay. Well, make sure I can see you when you... Yeah. Sorry, Laura.
Yeah, can I just clarify? I'm here as a substitute for Councillor Buttle. I think the committee are still working from an out-of-date list of members. I'm not a full member of this committee. I only appear now as a substitute, and that feeds into the minutes of the previous meeting when we get on to that as well.
Right, thank you, Laura. Thank you for that clarification. Right, we had a meeting, or there was a meeting of the committee on the 11th of March 2025. The minutes of that are on pages 7 to 10 of your agenda. Would someone like to move approval of those minutes, please?
Chair, having chaired that meeting, I'm happy to move them on the basis of further comments.
Councillor Burton, David, thank you very much. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Maelstrom?
Can I just mention the correction that needs to be made? I didn't give my apologies for that meeting. I'm down as having apologised. I didn't apologise because I'm not a member of the committee. If anybody apologised, I suspect it was Councillor Froggatt, who is a member of the committee but isn't mentioned on these minutes. So that's just a minor amendment, I think, that needs to be made.
Right. You weren't there then? No, so you can't second it. Right. Would someone like to second that? Councillor Slack, yes. Right, moved and seconded. Have all those in favour, please show. Any against? And those who weren't there? Abstain. Right, that's carried. Thank you, colleagues. Right, item 3 is interests. Would any members like to declare any interest in any applications we're considering this evening? Take it from me that if you shop at a particular supermarket, that doesn't exclude you from taking part in the discussion. Any other declarations of interest? Well, that's fine. Right. Participation we take as part of the applications we're considering. So we'll now move on to the applications themselves. Our first application is in Wirksworth. This is an application for the demolition of an existing building, existing dwelling, and the erection of 7 new dwellings on Summer Lane in Wirksworth. Mr. Briggs, who was going to speak against the application, is now not going to speak this evening. So we have Mr. Piggott, who is the agent for the applicant, to speak in favour. Richard, you've got your customary 5 minutes to address the committee, please.
Thank you, Chairman, for the opportunity to speak, and good evening, members. I'm appearing this evening on behalf of the applicant, Commonwealth Homes, who trade as Elmhurst Homes. Elmhurst Homes are a local house builder who intend to develop the site as soon as possible using predominantly Derbyshire-based labour and suppliers should tonight's application be approved. The application is for 7 family homes to be built on the site of 62 Summer Lane, Wirksworth. The ageing existing house, which is structurally unsound and environmentally inefficient, sits in a large 1-acre plot which is surrounded by housing on all sides. The Wirksworth neighbourhood plan states that residential developments of 3 or more dwellings should include a high proportion of family homes, with at least 65% having 3 bedrooms or more. The proposed homes would all provide high quality family accommodation with 3 to 4 bedrooms. They will be highly energy efficient with air source heat pumps, modern insulation materials and EV charging to all plots. The application therefore aligns with the town's identified need for family housing. This is also reflected within marketing research commissioned by the applicant, which confirms that there is high demand for good-sized family homes. The development will sit behind an established hedge on the northern side of Summer Lane and will add variety and quality to the local housing stock. We have worked closely with your officers and responded to the pre-application advice received. The scheme has been carefully designed and the style and size of the homes reflect feedback from officers, which included removing the originally proposed 5-bed properties. The officer report concludes that the proposal is respectful of the prevailing density of development in the area. Statutory consultees have raised no objections, and I would also flag the fact that Wirksworth Town Council have raised no objection, and at their meeting to discuss the application, noted that the former gardens at the site had become overgrown. The overall result is a recommend to approve from your planning officers, subject to pre-construction conditions which have been accepted by the applicant. I note that a number of neighbour objections have been received, and I would like to address the main concerns. Concerns have been raised about the loss of a large garden. Whilst in years gone by there was an attractive garden on the site maintained by the owners and their gardeners, when one of the former owners died and the other moved into a care home, unfortunately the house became empty and the garden overgrown. In terms of ecology, Derbyshire Wildlife Trust made a number of requests for clarifications and additional detail during the application process. All of these queries have been answered to their satisfaction. For context, it is worth noting that the majority of the biodiversity loss relates to site clearance carried out before the applicant even owned the site. As confirmed in the officer report, no protected trees have been affected by the clearance works. An extensive tree planting scheme is included within the proposed landscaping designs. This will involve the planting of native tree species as opposed to the non-native trees to be lost. I can also confirm, contrary to fears raised by some of the neighbour comments, that the hedgerows surrounding the site will be retained in their entirety and will form a natural boundary for the site. The scheme will also require the developer to make an off-site habitat contribution in excess of £40,000 in addition to its on-site landscaping improvements. I will conclude by reminding you of the benefits of the proposal. As a first-tier settlement, Wirksworth is a primary focus for growth and development. The site is a 10-minute walk to the vibrant town centre, and the town provides significant levels of jobs, community facilities and infrastructure. The sensitive redevelopment of sites like this reduces the pressure to develop greenfield sites and makes a contribution to the district's housing land supply shortfall. I would respectfully suggest to members that an opportunity such as this to develop an infill site and provide high quality, energy efficient family accommodation and creating local employment is exactly the sort of development which should be supported and is a clear example of the right houses being built in the right place. I therefore urge you to follow the advice of your officers and support the application. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Richard. That was a very clear presentation. Thank you again. Right, I'm now going to ask the planning officer, the case officer responsible for considering this application to present it to members. Miles Joyce, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. As has been said by the agent, it's a demolition of an existing dwelling proposed and erection of 7 numbered dwellings, 1 3-bed, 6 4-bed at Windward, 62 Summer Lane, Wirksworth. Perhaps before we go on to that, just for members to perhaps look at the late information, there's a couple of third-party representations, but there's also some minor modifications to 3 of the conditions, as well as an additional condition which I've proposed, which is for obscured glaze to be fixed to side-facing first floor non-habitable windows, just to avoid any potential overlooking of adjoining sites.
Chair, we don't seem to have any late representation on this particular.
No, I don't think anyone's got anything, Miles.
It was circulated by Paul earlier today.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, it's a note that's on your desk in front of you.
Can you tell us how it starts, because they're not titled with the application.
No, it's missing.
So the opening paragraph reads, after the finalisation of the committee.
No, it's not that, Chair. It was sent, this is something which seems to be not related. It was actually says, it should say late observations. And as it does normally.
You don't appear to have anything. I haven't received anything saying late observations. I don't think any other members have. Perhaps you could read them out or summarise them, Miles.
All right. Yes, yeah, my apologies, Chair. I thought they were circulated. That's not urgent, anyway. So the modifications were an additional condition of obscured glazing for side-facing first floor non-habitable windows. The reason being that would be to avoid any potential overlooking of adjoining properties. A modification of the remediation contaminated land strategy, because one was submitted as requested and it was just superfluous part of that condition, and a minor wording change to drainage condition, which was just say also in accordance with the local planning authority. So it just gives a caveat that there may be a further agreement when the application comes in for discharge of conditions. That aside, that is the modifications proposed. The third-party ones were referring essentially to the works felling trees earlier on, well actually last year, late last year, before the application came in. So, and I will deal with that in my presentation. Just to get back to the presentation, the site's roughly 0.4 hectares or an acre. There is an extensive mature boundary screening, as you've heard. It lies within a residential area. The site contains some garden buildings, but it essentially is undeveloped at the moment. It's within the Wirksworth town development boundary. A small section in the northeast is subject to a tree preservation order. However, this was not part of the felled works. When the trees were being felled, there was an enforcement investigation which concluded there was no breach of planning control because they were not protected by the said order. The proposal is, as you heard, to erect 7 family-sized dwellings. Each house will have a garage, double for plots 1, 4 and 7, and you can see the plots there. You can see 3 to 7 at the back and 1 to 3 at the front. There's 2 separate accesses. One is an existing access, one will be a new access from the site, reopened actually rather than new. There will be 19 car parking spaces. Every plot will have 7. There'll be 3 visitor car parking places as well. And that's an net increase of 15 spaces. The mix is family housing, as said. The mature screening will be retained, has also been said, to the west, north and east boundaries. In terms of the consultancy responses, yes, there were some. There was 11 responses. They boiled down to highway safety, insufficient space for passing of vehicles and for car parking and access arrangements at that narrow point in Summer Lane, tree felling and insufficient information submitted with the application, amenity concerns if the hedge are not retained, particularly in relation to Elliott Close properties, and also one concern about obtrusive design. There's also a non-planning concern which suggests that we should remove the TPO because one of the trees, an ash tree, is suffering from disease. So just to reiterate, there are no objections from statutory consultees. There were some hold-on objections requiring further information from the tree officer and from the Wildlife Trust, our ecologists. Both have been satisfied with the further information that was submitted subject to conditions. As you've heard from the agent, the principle is accepted, not only in terms of the local plan, but also in terms of the neighbourhood plan for residential development. And if our MP4 is quite specific when it comes to 65% being family house sized. Now, and being in at least in line with the nationally described space standards in terms of internal floor area. And I can confirm that they comfortably exceed the minimum requirements and nationally described space standards. And therefore, they're fully compliant with policy MP4. There's a stepped plinth course in terms of design, and we start to get onto some of the design types here, and they're looking at taking from the local vernacular in terms of density, it's commensurate to the local area. In terms of the scale and height, it's 2-storey apart from the smaller dwelling at plot 3, which is 1.5 dwellings, and the dwelling density at 18 dwellings a hectare, so it's roughly commensurate with what you expect in the area. It is laid out to accommodate the detached housing without giving rise to the unacceptable loss of amenity. There is significant space from the side-facing windows of plots towards Elliott Close, and the side windows there are a sufficient distance away from the houses themselves, but also that condition to obscure glazy side-facing first-floor windows should also further mitigate any potential concerns about overlooking. If I go on and look at trees and landscaping, the tree officer did notice numerous trees around the site boundary and just outside it. They did note from aerial photographs that numerous trees have been recently removed, hence what I alluded to before, and some of the concerns of the adjoining properties. But I have said with submission of additional information, that hold an objection has now been removed subject to a condition requiring adherence to the recommendations for tree protection and tree planting. The ecological response from Derbyshire Wildlife Trust, they say in terms of the ecology, in terms of protected species, there's nothing particularly sensitive in this area, that they did submit a preliminary ecological appraisal. There was no evidence of nesting birds during the assessment of this, and a single nocturnal bat survey was undertaken and no bats were recorded either. They feel that no survey works given this licensing or mitigation is required, so they have no objections subject to standard ecological enhancement conditions. Now, in terms of biodiversity net gain, the site has been some clearance. There will be obviously infill on this site. So we've found that although the hedgerow biodiversity net gain is well above the 10% positive from this proposal, at something like 103%, almost 60% of the habitat is lost from the starting point here. So that will have to be off-site. Now, there has been some concerns in previous schemes in terms of the biodiversity net gain hierarchy. Now, what this simply is to say that if something can't be on-site provided, that it can be provided off-site. It needn't be to the nearest place or the town or locality, but it has to be part of that, and it has to be demonstrated that can be done over the timescale. So having looked at that, the Derbyshire Wildlife Trust officers are satisfied that that will be the case, and there will be a pre-commencement condition tying in the off-site biodiversity net gain to this development, and that's condition 20 in your report before you. Other things have been concerned, like highways. There is no concern from the County Highway Authority. Again, in terms of standard conditions, you'll see in the reports for visibility displays, for car parking to be implemented prior to occupation, internal roads, surfacing, manoeuvring spaces, all of that needs to be implemented pre-occupation. So that means that the statutory authority is happy, subject to those conditions. The flood risk and drainage, it's flood risk zone 1. It's going to be a low risk from surface water flooding. There is an existing drain network which you can tap into for failed drainage. They are looking at a combination of SUDS treatment features as well, which is, again, is subject to conditions which you'll find in your reports. And just to wrap up, in terms of other issues, contaminated land, a study of the land was submitted. It was found to be acceptable by the environmental health, so subject to a revised condition, that will be for implementing it in accordance with that will go ahead. Climate change, you've heard about air source heat pumps, you've heard about EV charging. I'd also say materials, layout, orientation, the juxtaposition all helps to maximize solar insulation, and you've also got shading from the existing trees as well. So as a whole thing, I would say there's a net gain here. So I think simply bringing it together, the balance, no 5-year housing land supply, so the tilted balance applies, which is that to grant unless the harm significantly and demonstrably outweighs the benefits. Now, it's acceptable in principle. There's a net addition to family housing supply here. The housing will be of a good standard for living conditions for future occupiers, spatial, well ventilated, good circulation, good amount of private amenity space. They retain most of the natural screening, sufficient off-street car parking and access arrangements, and from an ecological side, in terms of ecology and biodiversity net gain, it's acceptable. So my recommendation is subject to conditions that a plan permission should be granted. Many thanks.
Thank you, Miles, for that. Right, at this stage in the proceedings, there's an opportunity for members of the committee to ask Miles any questions. Members, please ensure they are questions rather than statements, and please limit yourself to 3 questions. So far, I've got 5 members who want to ask questions. Councillor Slack, you are first.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, you are correct, Miles. The application, the trees were cut down before the application. Very, very savagely cut down. This property, a few years ago, 6 or 7 years ago, was open to the public. It was a really special garden with a lot of native hardwood trees there. and people used to come from all round to view the garden. But of course, as people got older, the garden got neglected, and
Peter, it must be a question,
it
please.
is coming to a question. It is coming to a question. I'll dodge that area and come to the question. The question is, cutting the trees down before the planning application comes in can't be right. This can't be right. Tree office should be there before this cut down, shouldn't it, really? It's too late when they cut down. The tree office can't be there, can it? That's the question.
Thank you very much, Councillor Slack. I think there's two issues here. One is if trees are protected.
Yeah.
Now, the protected trees weren't cut down. That was subject to that TPO. The tree officers said that. Other trees on site were not protected. They were felled. If they're not protected, then whether we like it or not, we can't do anything about that.
I find that very hard to believe, because I do it around that area, and there were some special trees there. So be it, but they've gone now. So.
Councillor Lees.
Thank you, Chair. The road to the 3 rear houses, is that going to be built to an adoptable standard, or is it going to be a private roadway? Just thinking of bin wagons, etc. Is it wide enough for the bin wagon and those sort of appliances?
Well, it'll be a private road, so also, I mean, it could be in that situation, it could be set up from the street. There is a condition, I believe, looking at things like refuse. There is some detail there, but there is a condition which requires details to be submitted for refuse storage. And to be carried out in accordance with those approved.
So there'll be no need then, they don't have to put street lighting or anything like that in then? There'll be no,
It's
no
condition
lighting
10. No.
Thank you.
Councillor Hughes.
I think this is a minor point, but Miles, you referred to bicycle parking and the requirement for a condition on bicycle parking recommended by the Highways Authority. And you also, I think, if I recall correctly, you noted in the report that this could be done bicycles could be put in a garage. And then in the condition, do we really need that condition? Is my question, I suppose. The condition on bicycle storage.
So yeah, it could be put in a condition. By all means, you could suggest that it's removed.
You've suggested a condition. I'm just wondering whether we need it.
Well, you can look at it two ways. You can say, can it be put in the garages? You may feel that they're better for other issues and other uses. There's enough space to have a bespoke cycle storage on site. So it's quite reasonable, I think, to ask for one. Okay. I mean, at the end of the day, if you don't agree, we can remove the condition.
It's just that it's got to be maintained in that as a bicycle store in perpetuity, and that seems to be a hard condition to enforce on. And I suggest that it.
I think the way I see it is this. There's a case for either. So if you wish it, say that balance it should be removed. Quite happy to do so. Okay.
Councillor Peacock, Lucy.
Evening. So my question is about sorry, I didn't have a pen when you were talking about the policies. I'm trying to understand how this fits in with our policies on housing mix. Now, I'm looking at policy HC11, which I know it says about developments of 11 dwellings or more. But what I would like to know is why these houses can't be smaller, such that normal local people can actually afford them.
Through you, Chair, I think I'll come back on that point. I mean, we're asking members to consider the application in front of them.
Sorry, I know. I'm not suggesting that that's a reason to reject it. I want to know what the policy is so that I can look at it properly with a view to changing it for the future.
I mean, it is policy HC11. I know, obviously, we are going through the local plan review at the moment, and if there are national space standards to do with residential dwellings, there's not a overall size standard to do with the actual how big or small the property could be, as long as it meets that minimum threshold. What you're potentially alluding to there, Councillor, is that obviously we have a design guide effectively for each single settlement, which is a mammoth piece of work for any local authority to go through.
Councillor G.
Thank you, Chair. The item that you mentioned at the beginning about the additional condition on obscured glazing, is that absolutely necessary? Because I'm slightly concerned that what you're actually doing, if this is passed, I'm not want to predetermine it, but you're building houses for families to live in. Do you need to give them a situation where they've got a detrimental amount of light, and it's something that's difficult to police? So really what I'm asking, is that absolutely necessary for this situation? Because, you know...
Well, just to clarify, Councillor, it's non-habitable, so it's things like bathrooms, which often are obscured glazed. It's to the side. You know, the dwellings are relatively close together, and then there's potential for overlooking, limited as it is. So you could argue that if they're non-habitable, then don't need it, but it is quite common as a condition to have this imposed, just so you just give it belt and braces, just a little extra protection.
Yeah, so all the rooms with this condition applied to are bathrooms, they're not bedrooms?
No.
Right.
And they're only first floor as well.
Right, thank you.
If there are no further questions, colleagues, we'll now move into a debate. Just by way of a comment, I'm intrigued by your answer, Miles, that there's no requirement for any street lighting. It just seems strange to me that we're being asked to approve a development of 7 family homes with no requirement for any street lights, but maybe others will come back to that during the debate.
The only thing I'd say is refer to condition 14, and it is a fairly standard condition, more relating to ecology. But it is, if there are installations, then you'll need a lighting strategy. So, but in itself, there wouldn't be a requirement, no. But if it was being considered, then they would need to come up with details of a lighting strategy to be submitted in terms of safeguarding sensitive, protected species and ecological potential adverse impact on ecological species. Light sensitive bats, for instance, being a case in point. Sorry, I didn't quite get that out as clearly as I wanted, but essentially that's the reason for that condition.
If it's going to be dark, I think there'll be plenty of bats around. Right, we have a recommendation to approve. Would any members like to move a recommendation or an alternative? Councillor Hughes.
Yes, I'll move it. I think it's a fairly standard housing development for the area, and it's house style that will fit in with the area. I do have a slight concern about adding more outside spaces, outside protected spaces other than those that are on the plan, in order to provide dedicated bicycle storage. So that would seem to then be an additional physical element that isn't on the plans, and therefore we have some difficulty in assessing. So I suggest that, and we don't know how big these bicycle stores will be. They could be, for what family houses, 4 bicycles, 5 bicycles, in which case they would probably be the size of a good-sized garden shed. So I think perhaps there's some more work needs to be done on that particular condition, which I would leave to the officers to undertake.
As condition 8,
yeah. Okay, but otherwise I move this. I'd like to move this one.
Perhaps you'd like to reflect on a wording for that. Come back at the end of debate, David. Would anyone like to second? Councillor Lees.
Yeah, I'll second it, Chair. Even though, like Councillor Slack, I'm very disappointed that the site has been stripped of all the trees beforehand, but that was done before the present ownership. I am concerned about the lighting. I would like to see a lighting strategy included for some street lighting of some sort on the site, but happy to second it.
Chair,
When you say you would like to see, are you making a formal proposal to that?
I'd like an amendment, not amendment, another condition that street lighting could be, a lighting strategy could be carried out for street lighting.
Yeah, I'd accept that.
Right, that's moved and seconded with that additional condition there. Right, Peter Slack, Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. I will support this application because we need houses, but I would like to see a different approach, really. People shouldn't be able to cut trees down before planning applications come in. I mean, it should be reversed straight. If trees are being cut down, the tree office should go and decide what's cutting down, not wholesale cutting trees down. I think we've got to look at this seriously and tell the general public that you can't just go and cutting trees down without referring to the district council. So I think we've got to look at the point. Well, I will support this application because we need houses. I would have liked to see smaller houses like Councillor Peacock's just mentioned, but we are what we are. We've got in front of us, and I'm afraid we've got to have 7 houses. This will add to the increase in housing, so I will support this, but I would like to see alterations in future that before planning applications come in and people start wholesaling, cutting trees down wholesale, this has got to stop, and it's up to the district to stop it. Thank you, Chair.
Right, our Development Manager, Sean Robson, would like to make a point at this stage. Sean.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just through yourself, and just to clarify that point of Councillor Slack made. The clearance of a site and removing of hedgerows, clearing of topsoil, grass, trees that are not protected by TPO does not constitute development. There's nothing to stop an individual or individuals doing that. The only time that could be changed is if there's a national change to the Planning Act. That's something that a local authority, whether a district, borough council or unitary authority, can insist upon or enforce. So basically it doesn't constitute development to remove that, so we cannot stop that. Thank you.
Can I just come back just slightly? In the same area at Pettywood Road, a resident wanted to cut a tree down and they wouldn't let him do it. I mean, till the tree officer came round and then they stopped him doing it. So it's really contradictory, isn't it, really?
Thanks. I think Councillor Slack was expressing his disappointment more than anything else. Councillor Burfoot.
Thank you, Chair. I also will support this application. I suppose the point I would like to make is that I would have liked to have seen some smaller houses. We seem to be building far too many, in my view, 4-bedroomed houses, which to lots of people are not affordable. But we have to consider what is in front of us tonight, and so I will be supporting it, but having said what my thoughts are.
Councillor G. Gareth.
Thank you. Yeah, looking at this, I think this looks like an excellent proposal. I've heard that Wirksworth has recently been voted the best place in England to live, or Britain. So, and it's got a great school, Anthony Gell, and I think there are probably actually a shortage of larger houses for families who want to bring the family to Derbyshire. So in Wirksworth, I agree that a lot of these developments do have 4, 3, 4, 5-bedroom houses, but for a nice family wanting to live in Derbyshire, this would be a great place. I'd like to heed against the additional recommendation on street lighting for one reason, because this is a relatively small area of a development, and I presume the council isn't adopting the street. So the residents would then become responsible for the street lighting, and no doubt the houses themselves will have lighting. And, you know, when we're looking in this eco world we're entering into, we don't want to cause some sort of intrusion with the lighting. So I don't think it's necessary to insist on that. You're just causing an additional complication that certainly isn't necessary in that location. Thank you.
Any further contributions? No, we're going to move to a vote.
Chair, can I come back?
Oh, so,
Yeah.
David, members of the public, the member who proposes a recommendation is able to wind up at the end of the debate. So, David.
Thank you. So on number 8, condition number 8, currently it reads, no individual dwelling in the development hereby approved shall not be occupied. I think that shall be occupied until sheltered, so I think there needs to be a change in wording there. And access, in that respect, I think I would only want to delete the last sentence, the storage area shall be maintained for this purpose thereafter, because I think we can't put that sort of condition on future owners of the properties. They might want to use the space for something else, wheelchairs, for example. And then in number 10, condition number 10, which is about bins, the reason is to ensure that the play area provided in a timely manner. I don't think there is a play area associated with this, so I think that needs to be reworded. And the reason needs to be reworded in this case. Okay. Other than that, yes, I'm very pleased to be moving this. Thank you.
Councillor Lees has seconded. Did you fully understand the first of David's points there?
Totally, Chair. Happy with it.
Right. So it's been moved and seconded with a number of amendments incorporated. I think the most significant being that there's now a requirement for a lighting strategy to, if you like, to ensure the public safety of residents and visitors to the site. Wording along those lines, but I'm sure officers can interpret the recommendation from Councillor Hughes. Right. All those in favour of the recommendation, please show. And I think that is unanimous, so that is carried. So that application is now approved. Thank you, colleagues. Right, now moving on to our second application this evening. This is an application in Matlock on Dale Road on the former Harvey-Dale quarry. Many people may know it better as the Education Authority site, but it was the former quarry. It's a full application for the demolition of the former county council buildings and the construction of a discount retail food store with its car parking and landscaping, various engineering works and an electric substation. We have one speaker this evening, Mr. Stringer, Mark Stringer, going to speak, who's a representative from Aldi, the applicants, who's going to speak in favour of the application. Mark, you've got 5 minutes to address the committee, please. Then.
Good evening, Chair, Councillors. My name is Mark Stringer, Real Estate Director for Aldi, with responsibility for a geography spanning the East Midlands and across Yorkshire. And I'm delighted to be able to speak this evening in regard to our desire to bring an Aldi food store to Dale Road in Matlock. The comprehensive report before you addresses the issues raised and recommends our application for approval. I don't intend to duplicate the consultee's overwhelmingly positive comments, but there are some matters which I believe merit further emphasis. The Dale Road site's potential for redevelopment is clear. It occupies a prominent location within the defined settlement boundary of Matlock and a unique opportunity to redevelop Harvey-Dale Quarry. The site will be soon unoccupied, so our application provides the opportunity for an economic use to be delivered in a sustainable location, offering a clear betterment for the site and compliance with both the local and national planning policy. Matlock has been a target location for Aldi for over a decade, owing to its lack of discount food retailer, and the Dale Road site offers an outstanding opportunity for residents of both Matlock and nearby settlements to benefit from access to affordable food whilst removing the need to travel further afield by car. Aldi has benefited from engaging with both the district and county council from the earliest possible juncture, with a pre-application request being submitted in May of 2023. Several subsequent and very positive meetings have been held with Edward Vorden, Adrian Martin, and numerous other technical consultees. This pre-application process has genuinely helped to mould the scheme that is presented before you today. Local residents have also benefited from several opportunities to provide comments through both in-person consultation events and online engagement prior to our formal submission. This engagement has been helpful in identifying the further needs and wants of local residents. This early community consultation led to over 800 respondents, of which over 92% supported our proposals, an unprecedented figure in this region for Aldi. Following the submission of the application, an incredible 757 members of the public wrote to express their support for the application, as is expanded upon in the committee report. And I would like to take this opportunity to formally thank the residents of Matlock and the surrounding areas who took the time to show their support. Critically, and as is demonstrated within the committee report, there are no outstanding objections from any consultees, including highways, with particularly supportive comments coming from the Economic Development team, who support the increase in opportunities for jobs for local people. Representations were made on our application by Sainsbury's earlier this year, primarily querying the need for a further food store in Matlock, the proposed retail impact of Sainsbury's of a new Aldi store, and the pedestrian access into the proposed scheme. We have provided a robust response to all of these points, clarifying that indeed there will not be a significant impact on Sainsbury's. Importantly, a view which is supported by the Council's independently appointed retail consultant. Indeed, the same independent consultation undertaken on behalf of the Council found that the Aldi application passed both the sequential and retail impact assessment, meaning that our application is fully acceptable and supported in retail terms. With regard to the need for a new food store, it is evident that with over 92% of residents supporting the application and supportive comments received from the Matlock Civic Society, Town Council and Economic Development team, that there is indeed a demonstrable need for a new affordable food store. Further to this, through discussions with the County Highways team, it is proven that there is no pedestrian safety concern on this site. As such, it has been agreed with the Council that the objection made by Sainsbury's has been fully addressed in this submission. As previously referenced, Aldi have worked hard with nearby residents and neighbours to ensure that residential amenity will not be harmed by our proposal. This has involved technical documents such as noise impact and air quality assessments, alongside demolition management plans being commissioned and submitted in support of the application. Aldi has also submitted cliff face remediation strategies and specifications to address how rockfall risk will be mitigated through netting, reinforced bunds and fencing, providing a betterment compared to the existing arrangement. This work has all been consulted on by the EHO, with, again, no objections lodged against any of these aspects. We have also engaged in extensive liaison with the Derbyshire Wildlife Trust to ensure that the proposal has no impact upon any roosting bats that may be housed in the vicinity. Indeed, the proposals will actually provide a betterment in ecological value through delivering a 10% net gain on the site. I am mindful of time, and so will draw my comments to a close. Are you excited by the prospect of delivering a food store here in Matlock? And it is clear that there are no justifiable planning reasons for why this application should not be approved today. The
Can you draw to a close, please?
I've worked extensively and collaboratively with your officers over the past 18 months to develop a scheme which is deliverable and that enhances the choice for residents of Matlock, as well as the numerous surrounding settlements. Through redeveloping an unoccupied site and providing an affordable main food shopping destination, up to 50 jobs for local people will be created.
You've exceeded your 5 minutes. Stop. That'll do, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Right. Yes, this is a really important planning application for Matlock and for the district. And I think when Edward Vorden introduces it, I hope he'll explain to members of the committee the way in which the potential impact on the town centre and other centres like Darley-Dale and Cromford have been assessed as part of the application. So we're looking at considering the application not just the site itself, but as has been alluded to by Mr. Stringer, the impact on the town centre and the way that impact has been assessed. So it's an application we need to consider very carefully, notwithstanding the fact that retail food stores are very popular with members of the public. I think we have a wider obligation to our community at large to ensure that we give this due consideration. So Edward, would you like to introduce the application, please?
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, this is a full planning permission sought for the demolition of the existing buildings on site and the construction of a discount retail food store, along with the formation of the associated car parking, plant, landscaping and engineering works. So that's the master plan up there. So the site consists of a portion of the disused Harveydale Quarry in Matlock and includes the vacant John Hadfield House. The site also includes an existing vehicle repair business. The site is bound to the east by Dale Road and 110 Dale Road, which is a Grade 2 listed building, which is currently a VETS. The site is bound to the south by an under construction residential development, and it's bound to the west by large cliff faces of the quarry. So the principal development is established under policy S3 of the local plan, which permits appropriate development within the defined settlement boundaries. It's acknowledged at the start of the report that the proposal will result in the loss of the existing mechanic business on site, which is factored into the planning balance insofar as that was not marketed as part of the gaining of the site effectively. So the NPPF sets out that a sequential test needs to be applied to the planning applications for main town centre uses, such as retail, that are not within defined town centres, meaning it needs to be demonstrated that there are no sites available within the town centre before considering edge of centre or out of town locations. So to that end, I mean, the applicant carried out a detailed assessment within the catchment area based on a 5-minute drive time covering Matlock, Bath and Cromford. This was reviewed by our independent retail consultant and considered appropriate, and even if this is extended to a 10-minute drive time in terms of considering the fact that we're a relatively rural district, it was still considered to cover the main town centres and main areas that were appropriate for the sequential test. In undertaking this exercise, there were no sequentially preferable sites identified in Matlock, Bath or Cromford by both the District Council or the applicant. One potential site was identified in the centre of Matlock, and that was identified by the District Council, and the District Council had asked the applicant to assess the former bus depot in Matlock. However, in undertaking that exercise, it was deemed that the site was too small to accommodate the development, even accounting for flexibility in terms of floor space and car parking provision. And furthermore, it was under different ownership, with no evidence of it coming forward for sale anytime soon. So overall, it was found there was no sequentially preferable sites. The District Council and the applicant had not identified any other sites that were potentially available to study. In terms of impact, the applicant undertook high-level assessments of the health of key centres and carried out a shopper survey as well, and they provided forecast patterns of trade diversion to the proposed store. Now, it's not surprising that the primary trade diversion would be from Sainsbury's. In terms of the sort of convenience shops within the town centre, such as M&S and the Co-op, the trade is a lot lower. Most of the convenience goods shops relates to a trade deficit of about 4% in terms of a trade diversion, and then M&S is higher due to it being a slightly larger shop at around 7% in terms of trade diversion. All of the information that Aldi had provided, both up front and during the course of questions raised by our independent retail consultant, it was assessed that there was no significant adverse impact on the viability or vitality of the town centre. And in terms of the impact on Sainsbury's, it should be borne in mind that Sainsbury's is technically also not in the town centre as well. So that should be taken into consideration as the main policy thrust of this objective is assessing the vitality and viability of the town centre rather than anything else. So in turning to flooding, the development's passed the sequential test in terms of not being able to find any sites available in and around Matlock to accommodate development that are at a lower risk of flooding. It's a similar exercise to the retail sequential test in that sense. In terms of sustainable drainage measures, that includes matters such as a attenuation tank, which is underneath the car park, and that's going to be flow controlled to limit the rate of discharge from the site. This approach has been deemed acceptable in principle by the LFA, and there's a condition recommended to secure further details and to make sure that's all delivered appropriately. In terms of the design, my apologies that the elevations are rather small, so we'll go with this for now. So in terms of the design, the food store consists of a contemporary commercial design, including large shopfront glazing and metal cladding in silver and anthracite. It will be set back further into the quarry with the proposed car parking to the front of the store in a similar position to where John Hadfield House currently is. And it was considered during the review of the design that this was an appropriate design rationale for this site. This was based on the fact that it would result in an improvement compared to the existing situation, and it would enable us to highlight the cliff faces behind it as well, which are considered an important factor in the local conservation areas such as Matlockdale Conservation Area and in part Matlock Bridge as well. And there was no harm identified to the nearby Grade 2 listed building either. Turning to amenity, a noise impact assessment was submitted with the application, which confirms that the store would not result in any adverse impacts on amenity, and there's no other amenity issues that have been identified, even relating to the delivery of the adjacent residential scheme with regards to daylight, outlook, or privacy. So it's considered that the conditions relating to the operating hours, delivery and construction hours are appropriate in that regard. The proposal does include upgrading the existing access, includes widening it and also to provide a new signal controlled junction, which includes pedestrian crossings. The store would benefit from 109 car parking spaces, including 6 disabled spaces, 4 active electric vehicle charging points, as well as passive provision for a further 22 electric vehicle charging spaces, as well as 4 Sheffield stands as well to the front of the store. The transport assessment that was submitted and the forecast within that indicated that the development would not result in any severe impact on the local highway network, and the Highway Authority have provided no objections to the scheme overall, both in terms of highway safety or in terms of traffic, subject to conditions relating to the access coming forward and parking and the provision of a full travel plan as well. In terms of ecology, a battle licence is going to be required due to the loss of a roost in one of the buildings on the site. Derbyshire Wildlife Trust have reviewed this very carefully, and the applicant and DWT have worked closely together to ensure that appropriate mitigation measures are secured. This includes, in terms of delivering the appropriate rock drapery for the cliff stability works. So a bat mitigation strategy has been provided, and Derbyshire Wildlife Trust have deemed that appropriate and can be conditioned accordingly. The proposal will result in a net gain in biodiversity as per the statutory requirements. There is a loss of high distinctiveness woodland, so it does still meet the 10% B&G, but in any case there'll still be a requirement to provide some off-site woodland gain in addition to the 10% that's secured as part of the statutory requirements as well. The proposal would result in some loss of the trees on site in terms of being able to deliver the new access and deliver the scheme as a whole. But the Tree and Landscape Officer is satisfied that, considering this is offset by the planting of 27 new trees and also the associated landscaping, it's deemed that the losses are acceptable in this instance. In order to develop the site, remediation measures to mitigate contamination and also to secure the safety of the cliff face are secured by condition. Measures include a rock catching fence, bund and rock drapery as well. So the condition will secure further details of those and also the management and maintenance details of those as well. The development also includes a range of renewable energy sources such as solar panels and an air source heat pump as well in terms of our compliance with PD7 of the local plan. So that covers all the main issues. In terms of applying the planning balance, it's the main element of conflict of policy related to the loss of the existing business on site. But overall, in terms of looking at the benefits of the scheme in terms of enhancing the character of the area and also generating a much larger number of jobs than will be lost as a result of the scheme, it was considered that the proposal can be recommended for approval subject to all the conditions and obligations set out in the report.
Thank you, Edward. Over to questions from members now. Councillor Burton. David, you were first.
Chair, a statement question. I do genuinely welcome this application and feel it will significantly complement the shopping experience in Matlock. End of the statement. The questions are simply this. You've mentioned quite rightly, Edward, and it was of concern to us on the site visit yesterday, the potential or possibility of that cliff face. Does anyone actually independently inspect and ensure that, you know, that location, that situation with the netting and the fencing, from looking at some of the rocks and things that are pretty close to the edge and didn't look over secure, I think it was a shared view by some of the councillors that the netting, you know, would probably not be as effective as you would want it to be. But that's only a personal point of view. So really what I'm asking is, we're very concerned that, you know, nothing untoward does happen. That's probably the only downside for me personally. And the other question is, on the map, where you've got to the left of the shop, the store, the trees and grass area, is that where the garage currently is?
Thank you, Councillor. So I'll start with the garage point. Yeah, so the garage is effectively, it's located about to the, currently on the sort of left-hand side of where the Aldi is sited. So it's where the sort of plant and servicing area to the back of the Aldi food store is. That's roughly where the existing vehicle repair shop currently is. If anything, is slightly forward of that. In terms of the cliff stability, cliff stabilisation and safety measures, I mean, absolutely, it's of course in Aldi's interest as well to make sure that the site is properly safe, both, you know, for their staff, for their buildings, for members of the public and all the rest of it. What we have in the application is effectively a series of recommendations that were provided after geotechnical surveys were carried out, including detailed rock face surveys. And what the condition secures is that the recommendations effectively are picked out. So we've identified that the rock drapery, the rock catching fence and the rock catching bunds as well are all things that are going to be required. And the condition allows us to secure those and also furthermore secure management and maintenance of those. So we will expect to have, and it'll need to be signed off, who's actually going to be maintaining these and keeping them up to date. It will expect, you know, a schedule setting out how often they're going to be inspected and by whom, and that will ensure that they are maintained up to a high standard. As I say, it's in everyone's interest for that to take place. But in any case, you know, District Council as well has its own duty from an environmental health perspective to ensure that these sites are safe as a whole. I mean, from a development management process, we've discharged that duty by reviewing the documentation that's been provided and recommending a condition to secure those further details.
Thank you, Chair. No more questions. Thank you, Edward.
Councillor Sue Burfoot.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, can I just thank Edward for that excellent report? So thank you for that. Can I also preface what I say in terms of question and anything I might say later? Just to point out to us all that Derbyshire County Council is the highway authority. Derbyshire Dales District Council is not the highway authority. But my two questions are kind of connected with highway things, so I hope you can answer them. Could you point out for us exactly where the pedestrian crossing is going to be? And is it just pedestrian controlled, or is it on some kind of timer?
Thank you, Councillor.
Do we know?
In terms of being able to point out where the pedestrian crossing is, I do apologise for how small it is on the site plan. So I don't have the measurement for you in terms of how offset it is from the actual junction itself. There's a very slight imprint of text just offset from the railway bridge. It is approximately in that location. I mean, in any case, as you said, I mean, in terms of bringing forward the pedestrian crossings, those are brought up, and it puts out on the master plan as well, that these are delivered in line with the highway engineer's specifications effectively. So they'll have to carry out what's called a section 278 agreement, because considering it's the public highway. So ultimately the highway authority will get the last say on what is actually built out and make sure it's up to their standards. So it'll be up to them to deem the appropriate timings and sensors in terms of the actual what will be appropriate for those crossings effectively.
I mean, I think there are concerns in terms of, I would have liked to have seen some kind of hatching, because when people are coming from Matlock Bath into Matlock, there will be more traffic, and if people are stopping at that pedestrian crossing, they could be backing up. I would have thought there would have needed to be some kind of way of, well, it's usually hatching, but I assume that's not in your remit.
That's correct, Councillor. I mean, what I will say is in terms of the transport assessment that was carried out, that was based on forecasts for the year 2029. So yeah, 4 years from now, and based on the baseline and predicted amount of traffic that would result from this development in particular. That averaged out on all of the nearby junctions, including this one as well. It averaged out to 1 additional car per minute in the peak times. So that's the Friday PM and the Saturday peak. So that is effectively the highest level of increase that you'll see from this development, and that's at the peak times, and then lower than that. In terms of reviewing the actual the junctions, I mean, I do have it within my report somewhere, I must confess, I'd have to dig it out. All of the nearby junctions, including the existing site access, even with the additional traffic that's proposed, they'll all operate well in excess of their capacity in 2029. I mean, you'll see that highways and transport assessments, they'll talk about matters such as degree of saturation and the level of extra capacity. And I don't have the exact figures, I can dig them out, but it was around, between 80 and 90% for many of the junctions nearby, in terms of that's how much more traffic you could fit through those whilst maintaining an appropriate and acceptable level of traffic, effectively a traffic flow. So, yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, we do have to take the advice of county highways. The second question is just about concerns that have been raised about Holt Lane and the effect of traffic queuing up and trying to get onto Holt Lane or off Holt Lane, but that presumably is something for highways to deal with.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, in terms of seeking, so they haven't requested any specific, beyond the implementation of the improvements to the junction, they haven't requested anything additional in terms of mitigation specifically for Holt Lane. It's not something that was brought up within their statutory comments. It does have to be acknowledged that Holt Lane is, of course, it's a tight access, and it's the nearest one to the actual site. But in terms of the responsibility for making sure that that's safe, I mean, highways have discharged that requirement insofar as it relates to this development. It's based on the figures I've provided and the forecast. It's not considered it would massively change the situation as existing, even if that existing situation isn't ideal. So there's scope for the highway authority to address concerns relating to Holt Lane, but that's not for the scope of determining this application.
Councillor Hughes, David.
Thank you, Chair. I've got three questions, three areas of question. First, that is pedestrian access, access by public transport, and access by bicycle, or electric bicycle or motorbike. I'll take that one first because that's the easy one. Is there parking for bicycles and motorbikes on the plan?
Thank you, Councillor. I don't believe there's specifically dedicated motorcycle parking, but there's Sheffield stands for bicycle parking, and then obviously there's the that's in addition to the car parking spaces. I think it's Sheffield stands are the provision for cycles.
Given the propensity of using motorbikes in Matlock Bath, do you think it would be advisable that they do provide some motorcycle parking as well? There are a lot of visitors who will go to Matlock Bath, and they may by motorbike, and they may wish to go to Aldi, and if there's nowhere to park, then they're going to have problems.
Thank you, Councillor. It's something we can request. It's not something the Higher Authority deemed necessary, but if we thought it necessary to do so, we can do that as part of a new condition, effectively.
Aldi might like to think about that. The second point is about buses. Now, I've looked at the bus map, and the bus station from Matlock, there are two bus stops that would be the closest to this site. One of them is on Dale Road, about 100 yards before the bridge. The other one is about 100 yards the other way. Coming from Matlock Bath, the nearest bus stop is at 111, 112 Dale Road, which is about getting on, 75 yards or so. And then you get off the bus, and you have to walk up a hill, round a corner, or round a corner, up a hill to the. So what is the actual pedestrian access to the shop? Is it up through? How do you get there? I mean, one is a delivery. It looks as if you have to have a very tortuous route, which will add about, make it a very long journey from a bus stop. Now, the people who go on buses are generally older people, people who may not be quite as fit as others. So, and there's no bus stop shown on here. There's no indication that a bus can get onto the site and turn around and come back out of it. So what is the opportunity for bus access to the site, and how is pedestrian access going to be facilitated to shorten, to have a really short path from the bus stops and from Matlock Bath into the site?
Thank you, Councillor. So I'll start with pedestrian access in terms of, correctly identified in terms of there's quite a few local bus stops, within proximity to the site.
Well,
in terms of
they're quite a long way from the site, to be honest.
Relative to a lot of other locations within our district, I think the proximity is representative of what you'd expect in a. So it's a market town, first tier settlement within the district council, but at the end it's also still a relatively rural town in the national perspective, effectively. But in terms of pedestrian access, again, I can only apologise for the sort of size of the site plan, but so there's both the site access itself and Dale Road will have new pedestrian crossings. So pedestrians will be able to cross from the side where 110 Dale Road is, as well as from the other side of Dale Road. And then there's effectively a pavement that goes across, and I believe effectively a zebra crossing that goes across into where the landscaping is, and then there's steps, and also a non-stepped area as well that goes around the landscaping as well, sort of following the direction of the access. So there is both a stairs and non-stairs access point around, and then you effectively follow a paved area around the car parking to the front of the store. Granted, it's a longer walk than if the food store was at the front of the site, but as you can appreciate from the site's under very difficult constraints in terms of where you can actually deliver site access and car parking, and all of the associated landscaping, and just making sure it's kept clear of all of the sort of cliff face areas as well, and also just from a perspective of design and character in terms of keeping what is whilst it's it's an acceptable design as laid out currently, it is it's a rather large building. Locating it further back as well, and it sort of improves the character of that site. So whilst it's a longer pedestrian access than is potentially possible, I think the benefits of this site layout and the potential problems with having a shorter pedestrian access, at the end of the day, we're dealing with this application in front of us, and highways haven't raised any concerns with that access. I mean, so from that point anyway, there is what I like to think a reasonably clear pedestrian access point or access options available to pedestrians in that regard. Turning to sort of bus access on the site, again, I mean, for the same reasons, it's a lot more of a constrained site. I mean, I know that there are sort of more internal site provision of buses in places like Sainsbury's, but that's a considerably larger, a larger site at the end of the day with more space to work with, and the site constraints here just make it very difficult for that to be carried out. But considering the relative the sustainable location that it has in the market town, relative to other locations in the district, it's got relatively good access to public transport in that regard. So I'd say, in sum, it's not something the Highway Authority have requested for this site in particular.
Can I suggest a 78-year-old person may request it because they may find it is impossible to get to the site from a bus or by walking because of the incline and the length of walk from the bus stop to the shop. I think it's not addressing the needs of a particular cohort of their market. So
can we come back to that in debate?
Yeah.
Because I think your concerns may be shared by others.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor G, you're next.
Yeah, just a quick question about Aldi's in general. From my experience of our two local examples, they're not all the same. I'll put a bit of a health warning on that because my wife doesn't agree with me, but given the fact that I'm the member for Bakewell, I much prefer going to the Aldi at Bakewell to the one at Belper. But in the respect of Matlock, the Aldi at Bakewell, when you look at the front-facing elevations and how it sits, it looks different. It's got stone cladding on the front. And the one at Belper I've seen doesn't. It's just like a steel building with the ordinary old cladding. Is there any, I'm not sure, from the pictures I was sent to my council email, it didn't seem to me like this one had gone as far as the Bakewell one to fit in with the surroundings. Now, because I think with that cliff face at the back, I'm positive about Aldi, by the way, because it was the only supermarket in Derbyshire that I've ever found a bottle of fondant. And that was absolutely wonderful. So it's my favourite white wine from Switzerland, by the way, that is. So Sainsbury's has definitely never had it, and Marks and Spencer's hasn't either. So,
can you get back to your question?
But basically, my question is, could Aldi go a step further and make the one in Matlock look as nice as the Bakewell one? Is it possible for us to ask for that condition? So when you go there, you feel that it looks nice, you've got the cliff behind you, etc., etc.
Thank you, Councillor. So I guess the short answer is no, in terms of we can't condition that they change their plans. Unfortunately, we have to assess what's in front of us. And I'll acknowledge that I did receive representations from, I believe it was the Matlock Civic Association and also the County Council Strategic Planning team in terms of looking at the examples of other Aldis that have been delivered nearby and in the wider district as well. In terms of also the provision of stone, incorporating that into the design as well. So it was something that was looked into, and also the question was brought to the applicant as well in terms of justifying this particular design rationale. In this instance, effectively, the benefit we get here in terms of not pursuing a stone approach is that draws more attention to the cliff face areas at the back in terms of, because what the sort of Matlock Dale Conservation Area highlights as a distinctive character in the conservation area is the cliff faces, such as High Tor and others, having those more sort of striking views and of stone, and drawing more attention to those by having a rather sort of more metallic and non-competing element was considered to be an enhancement. And in the context as well of demolishing the John Hadfield house, which incidentally is also effectively a stone building, that's a good example of one that does not contribute well to the character of the conservation area. So all in all, it was still considered to be an enhancement of the area. But yeah, I say it's not something we can't ask them to, or condition that they change the plans at this stage. But in any case, we think that the existing plans, or at least the officer recommendation, is that the existing design is appropriate in this context.
But could we ask if they'd be open to that possibility? Because
Can you come round to that in debate, please?
Yeah.
I'm getting around to everyone in turn, as I've indicated. It's Councillor Slack is next.
Thank you, Chair. Very good report, Edward, very good, yeah. You mentioned holding tank for water, because it's going to be a lot of hard standing area, and when it rains heavy from the rock face, you're going to get a lot of water coming down there into the holding tank. What size is the holding tank and whereabouts is it?
Thank you, Councillor. I unfortunately don't have the size of the attenuation tank well within the report or memorised. In terms of its location, it's underneath where the car park is going. Mm-hmm. It will effectively hook up. So it will hook up as an attenuation tank with what are called flow control chambers, which will effectively, so it will build up water, and then the flow control will enable it to more slowly discharge water from the site when compared to what it's doing at the moment, which is freely discharging water straight into the Derwent, based on the existing drainage connection. So it'll hook up to the existing drainage with the attenuation tank and have those flow controls on there just to slow down discharge from the site. So there should be an improvement in that regard. Yeah.
Can I just come back a little bit, just me what we few moments. Now the holding tanks be in place. This is an area across the road at the bottom, which is well below Oldie Store on the A6. There has been, the river has come out in the places, and there has been a build-up and the drains can't take it, and there's quite a lot of water on the A6 at different times. So this holding tank will improve that situation, I think, yeah. It'll hold back water. It just depends how much it can hold, because we do get a lot of rain now. When it comes, right? So we've got to prepare for this, haven't we?
Councillor, what I can say is, this is just from memorisation of the plans, bearing in mind, is that the attenuation tank, the size of it, does take up a significant portion of the area of the car park. In that regard, I don't have, like I said, I don't have the sort of depth or volume of it from a capacity point of view. But to provide some reassurance, I mean, the lead local authority have, reviewed it, and I mean, whilst they've wanted some further details in terms of how it's going to be managed and maintained, just make sure it's kept working effectively. They're satisfied that will be both an improvement and also acceptable to our modern standards effectively when compared to the existing situation.
Thank you.
Councillor Archer.
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick one. Just pleased to see the number of EV and the sort of potential future-proofing for all the EV parking spaces. But just a quick question about those. Do we know what the charging speed capacity is of those that are going to be put in there? Because obviously, with it being a supermarket, a car park, people probably staying half an hour, 40 minutes. It's going to need to be fairly rapid charges, I would think, to make it worth putting them in. Just wanted to know whether we are aware of the speed, and if not, if we can just find that out, just make sure they are going to be sort of at least high speed, sort of 50 to 100 kilowatt or above in terms of the speed of those charges to make them worthwhile for a charge while you're shopping, because we don't want to encourage people to park long term there, I presume overnight. Just wonder about that.
Thank you, Councillor. I'd have to, in terms of my report, unfortunately, I don't think it includes the charging rate of the electric vehicle charging points. I mean, it is, in terms of it's potentially, if it's not already specified in the application, it can, that can be clarified as part of a condition in terms of bringing forward the car parking. I mean, bearing in mind the car parking as it is already secured by condition, and also, as you rightly pointed out, I mean, it wouldn't be in Aldi's interest either for them to have slow charging points, because at the end of the day they want people to be able to park up and charge their cars whilst doing shopping and not stay there effectively. So yeah, I apologise that it's not within the actual report, but I mean, like I say, it's something that can be sort of clarified in the process afterwards in terms of the between now and should the application be granted, in terms of getting the sort of obligations and things like that secured.
Councillor Dobbs, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to go back to the access and the pedestrian crossings, am I right in assuming that what's on page 55, that is 7.100, is the proposal? I got a bit confused. This seems to be also what's conditioned. So you have a signal control junction, and that's where the pedestrian crossings are. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Lees, Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. Going back to Councillor Burton again on the rock situation. On the condition number 4, are we happy that the drapery netting would hold such rocks, and likewise for the rock catcher fencing? Would it be another application if there was to, or does it, or could it include tapering some of the rock back at the top within this works, or is that a separate? Would that be a separate application? And the other part of the question is, once this work is done, does the liability then transfer over to Aldi, or does it stop with part of policy PD9 of the Derbyshire Dales local plan? Are we still responsible, or does it transfer to Aldi's responsibility?
Thank you, Councillor. In terms of the first point as to whether or not it's sufficient, I can confirm that insofar as it was deemed sufficient, first off in terms of from who the applicant appointed in terms of carrying out their geotechnical surveys, and then also by virtue of the fact that our environmental health officers reviewed it and didn't provide any objections on that point. I mean, bearing in mind, to be fair, when it comes to actual implementation, it's acknowledged that things can change or be revealed throughout the construction process. In terms of if there was an additional need to provide additional measures, it's likely that could be dealt with an amendment to the application, even if that included, relatively substantial work, as long as it fell within the same description of the proposal, which also includes things like engineering works to facilitate the development. Then it's something we could accommodate without having to resort to making them submit a new application to sort that out. The responsibilities point as well. In terms of our requirements from a policy perspective, I would suggest that we would be discharging that duty, as it were, by having reviewed those details, confirmed that we're happy with them, and then also condition that they comply with them, and going forward make sure that we enforce that they actually carry out their works as they've described, to make sure that that it's safe. Beyond that, it's predominantly falls to the landowner, a landowner's responsibility to make sure it's safe, both for them and for their customers and staff and assets.
Going back to the rock catcher fencing, then do you know if that's sort of put at different stages down the rock face, or is it all at the bottom?
Thank you, Councillor. That's I believe is predominantly all at the bottom. It's built alongside a reinforced bund. So for the majority of the cliff face, there's the rock drapery, and then beneath it, at the base of it, there's an offset section where there's a bund area raised up to a certain level, and then there's rock catcher fences. I believe there are semi-differing heights depending on the level of risk attributed to those particular areas. They're predominantly sort of 2-3 meters in height, and those form around the perimeter of the site. That's the main location for those. There is also just a more general public safety high-powered fence located above the cliff face as well, just in terms of dealing with anyone managing to get unauthorised access up there as well.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Froggatt, Helen.
Thank you, Chair. Mine isn't a question, it's the answer to a question. Councillor G asked about the cladding on Aldi and Bakewell. It was conditioned by Peak Park. When the store was built, it had to have limestone cladding. That's why.
It's very helpful, Helen. Thank you. I've got one question. Could you put the master plan back up? My question is, Edward, that you see from the plan there that there's a significant area outside the application boundary, the red line, which is owned by the applicant. That's the area within the blue line. That's on the top of the cliff face and also across the railway tunnel. Do we have any indication what the applicant intends to do with that land in their ownership, or how they're going to manage it? And if we don't, have we asked them?
Thank you, Chair. In terms of what they're doing with the application, I mean, given that they've drawn the red line boundary in, and so there's no development proposed, or the application isn't scoped to include any development or any works outside of the red line boundary. So effectively, anything within their ownership that does not fall within the red line boundary, there's no current development related proposals to that. I haven't asked them in terms of any non-development, proposals in that regard. So insofar as it does not relate to, my remit in that sense. But as far as we're concerned, there's no development proposed or anything required in those locations to facilitate the development going forward.
Would you normally ask in that circumstance for an indication of their intentions for land in their ownership, given that it's adjacent?
Through you, Chair, I'll come back on that point. I mean, the application site is within the red line. It is common practice with numerous planning authorities, and is encapsulated in the Planning Act, that the application site is that area marked in red. Any areas marked in blue, if that is going to be prudent to this application, then that blue line needs to be deleted and included within the red line. That just delineates the land that they currently own or have got control over. It's not common practice at all for any authority to ask an applicant what they intend to do with the land within their ownership. Otherwise, you'd have a situation where you'd be asking somebody who wants to put a second story extension at the back of the house what they're doing at the bottom of their 3-acre garden. It's not part of the consideration or what needs to be weighed in the balance by the case officer. Thank you.
Right. Has anyone who's not asked a question want to pose anything? No. Okay, we're going to move on to the debate now. We've got a recommendation to approve the application subject to a number of conditions. I'm just going to give you my observations on one aspect of the application before we move into a debate, and this relates to some issues that have been raised during questions, and that relates to the policy of the district council, and emphasise the district council, to reduce the need to travel by car and to promote sustainable travel. And of course, we also have a general equalities obligation to ensure that any new development does not disfavour those who may have a disability or any other consideration. And certainly looking at the master plan there, if you look, for example, at the way people who want to get to the store by foot, and once they leave Dale Road, you will see the trajectory they have to follow is to come into the site, turn right, cross the road, either go up a flight of 15 or 18 steps, or turn right and traverse all the way around the car park to find their way back to the front of the store. You contrast that with the service access, which is the road to the left, which goes straight up to the front door of the store. Now, I would say that to me is not fulfilling our obligation to ensure that people who want to use a store on foot, we're not making it as, or it is not made as easy as possible for them to do that. So I'm disappointed with that aspect of the design, and I don't really accept that because it's a difficult site, we should accept making it less easy for pedestrians to access. I think we're looking at the wrong end of the telescope. We should start from the perspective that we make it as easy as possible for people who come on foot. So we want people to come on foot. We encourage them to come on foot by making it as easy as possible for them to access, and that's whether they're able or less able, and people with disabilities. So I do think there's a case for revisiting the pedestrian access to the store there. I would say I think similarly with the consideration of the use of public transport. To me, I'm disappointed with the view that because there are bus stops 200 metres away, that's perfectly acceptable. If we want to encourage people, certainly when they've been shopping and coming out with their bags full of white wine or whatever it is, that we want them to be able to get onto a bus as easily and safely as possible, and that does not really involve them making a 200-metre walk to the nearest bus stop. I think, again, if we're serious about encouraging people not to use their car, it's not just people who don't have cars, it's we're trying to encourage people not to use their car, again, by making it as easy as possible for them to do so. Now, I entirely accept that Aldi's business model is based on people arriving and leaving by car, and there's nothing the matter with that. That's a very successful model. But as an authority, I think we have wider obligations. So personally, I would like to see the travel plan, which is a condition attached to the recommendations. I would like to see that modified to make provision for better direct pedestrian access for able and less able, and also reconsideration of access by public transport and buses in particular. And I do have a concern if we approve the detail of this scheme at this stage, including the way it's proposed to lay out the pedestrian access. If we approve that today, by the time we get a travel plan the day before the store opens, it will then be far too late to, it will be claimed that it's far too late to amend it to make it easy for pedestrians to access. So I do think we need to find I would like colleagues to consider finding a way through that. So at the outset of the scheme, we're approving something which has a better form of pedestrian access. But I'll leave it for that for my comments. We do have a recommendation to approve the scheme, so I'm looking for a proposer, either of that recommendation or a different one. Councillor Slack.
I'll move that, Chair. The recommendations, the officer's recommendation, I'll move that.
Do you want to add
Yeah, I'll
anything
explain. I think what you've just explained, you look at the other stores in the area, you look at Ashbourne, you'll have to walk a considerable way to the Ashbourne store. Bakewell, you have to walk out of Bakewell, a considerable amount of mileage. It's closer, actually, to the Matlock than what the other stores are. So I think what you have just explained defeats that, really. I don't accept that. So I'm prepared to move it, and I think it's a good for the area. It'll make Matlock people won't have to journey to Bakewell or Alfreton. Miles will be taken off vehicles going there. So I think it's a good move, really, and it'll sustain transport, in my opinion. So I take a different view. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Peter. Councillor Burfoot, Sue Burfoot.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second this application. There's clearly been a lot of work gone into this scheme, both from Aldi themselves and from our officers. So there are always things that are not, you can consider to be not quite right. I'll come on to those in a moment, if I may. You know, in this area we've got lots of old quarries, and some of the time We've had applications that haven't materialised, basically. And I think, assuming that this is agreed tonight, I have every faith that Aldi are very serious about doing this, and that they'll do it as soon as possible. So basically, it's an excellent use for an old quarry. It will have economic benefit to the town, and that's not just jobs. And I think it's going to give Matlock residents, of which I'm one, way more choice, and competition can only be a good thing. And Councillor Dew will be able to buy his wine at a reasonable price. So, you know. Can that be a condition? So, you know, those of us who live in Matlock who do travel, as we do, to Ashbourne, but usually to Bakewell, have been waiting for this for some time, and I understand that that's 10 years. It feels like a lot longer than that, to be honest, but let's hope, if approval's given, you know, you crack on with it. I suppose the disappointment is about this. You know, we do assume that everybody comes by car. I absolutely accept the fact that it is a very restricted site. It's not as big as the Sainsbury's site, but Sainsbury's do have a bus provision. The bus can go to Sainsbury's, and there is also a community bus that picks people up, and it takes them. It either takes them to Marks and Spencer's, or it takes them to Sainsbury's, lets them have 2 hours, and then picks them up. So if there was any possible opportunity on this site to do something like that, I think that would be a win-win. Thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair, and I thank you very much, Peter, for summarising my points and putting them into context in terms of the need for sustainable transport and the Equalities Act. And I hear what Sue is saying about the development. Councillor G, I rather like the look of the site against the building against the cliffs. It's I don't think we need to go back into doing pastiche. I think we can recognise that there are opportunities for good modern architecture. I am very concerned about pedestrian access and access by bus. One of our neighbours used to live behind us. She's now unfortunately died, and she used to get the bus to Sainsbury's from the top of her drive, and it would drop her outside Sainsbury's, and she could do that week in, week out until she was well into her late 80s, because the bus was convenient. She had to walk a short distance from up a drive, and then it dropped her outside Sainsbury's. Now she would have benefited from the lower prices that Aldi has, and she wouldn't be able to do that to this store, because she wouldn't be able to walk up to that shop. So we need to ensure that there is proper sustainable transport to the door of the shop, not to 200 yards down the road from the shop. And we have to ensure that there is good, the crossings are actually built, because we found that in other locations in Matlock on A roads, that while they may be in the plans, they aren't built. So Cardingshall Road, for example, was supposed to have a pedestrian crossing. It did not have it. So I looked to the officers to ensure that the highways actually builds the pedestrian crossing when it's. I'm sure there's been money provided by Aldi for that pedestrian crossing. That crossing is built. So I would like the delivery route to enable buses to go up there, turn right in front of the stop, in front of the store, and allow passengers on and off, and then they can return back through the car park. I feel that we could ask Aldi to ensure that happens. I'm not sure that we need to condition that, but it would enable that bus access to the front of the shop. So I'd take your advice about whether we can condition. I would like it conditioned that there was bus access to the front of the shop. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. If I may come back to a couple of points through you, Chair. I think so. One of the things, of course, yeah, in terms of ensuring that the pedestrian crossings come forward. I mean that you know, as part of our duties for enforcing any planning conditions effectively, you know, that has to be looked at, and one of the benefits, I suppose, of it being a pedestrian crossing on a, you know, on the A6 effectively is it'll be easy to spot if it's been implemented or if it hasn't. What I should say, I'd like to point out, I guess, that in terms of things like the travel plan, in terms of promoting things like active travel and public transport as well, I mean, it is predominantly related to staff, considering that, you know, Aldi ultimately will have more control over how staff, or, you know, be able to better promote those measures to staff rather than to members of the public. But having said that, the interim travel plan does include measures, you know, promoting active travel on their website as well. But one of the things I wanted to point out was that the full travel plan will actually be secured, or the monitoring of it will be secured by planning obligation, and that's actually something I need to bring up, is that my recommendation currently just says grant planning permission subject to conditions, and that needs to be amended to say subject to conditions and obligations as well, insofar as they relate to habitat banks and also the travel plan matters as well. So because there's going to be monies, Aldi are going to be paying effectively, there'll be a contribution made to the county council to actively monitor the implementation of the travel plan. So it works a bit, you know, there's that extra step and extra measure to make sure that their travel plan is implemented, and they'll actually be funding the county council to enforce that comes to fruition and comes forward, which is, you know, arguably, yeah, an extra step more than we'd normally do for other conditions, but it's more of a standard practice for the implementation of travel plans. As to whether we can request, you know, condition things like, you know, bus stops within the site or next to the site, at the end of the day, it's not been presented to us, and the Highway Authority have not requested it. By all means, at the end of the day, Aldi are present at this meeting, and also and you know, other members of Aldi will also be, the applicant will be listening to the proceedings here, and also want to promote their store to as many customers as feasibly possible, I can imagine. So it will be in their best interest to, you know, to have explored all the options possible, and it will likely be something that's looked at as part of the sort of implementation of the travel plan as to which measures are feasible and which aren't, because at the end of the day, you know, not everything is going to be feasible for each thing and each site, but there's a lot of things they can do in, you know, either indirect or direct actions they can take to encourage more, you know, encourage a modal shift, as they will call it, you know, away from cars and towards public transport and active travel effectively.
You made a number of points there, David. Are you content with them as making the points, or do you want to suggest anything further?
Well, I would like a route through the site for buses or community transport, so that it's easy for the buses to get in. I'm not suggesting that there should necessarily be a bus stop, because I think that there are a number of parties involved in that, namely the local bus company may not want to do that, so I don't think we can condition that, but we can perhaps provide a route for buses onto the site and around the site, which will be safe and enable such a bus stop to be provided if the bus company thinks it's necessary.
Councillor Slack, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, a community bus would be ideal to take the residents into the site. Not a great big bus, a community bus, which you use at Sainsbury's and other areas, so, and Marks and Spencer. So yeah, I agree with it. I agree we should be a community bus going there.
Councillor Burfoot, you seconded it.
Yeah, this is a difficult one really, because I'd really like to hear what the officer wants to say about this. I mean, basically, we are making a decision on what is in front of us, and I'm making my judgment on what is in front of us, and unfortunately that does not include a community bus. That was on my wish list, but it's not part of the application.
Can I just come back, Chair? We can't make it a condition, but we could suggest it, in other words. And I agree with that. We could suggest it. And it's probably in nobody's best interest to take that up, really. But we shouldn't make it a condition. No, I agree with that.
Perhaps I can suggest, and I think, Edward, you might agree that you will be in discussions with the applicant and the county council over what the travel plan actually says, because we don't have a travel plan at the moment. We have a requirement for one, where we don't have one to consider. So we've had a number of suggestions as to what that travel plan might encompass, which I'm sure you've taken note of. So perhaps we can, if members are happy, that those concerns can be noted, and you can take them up with both the applicant and the county council, and use your best officers to reflect our policy position and our equalities position in the content of that travel plan when it comes forward.
Chair, if I may, before we have other speakers, I just need to make it very clear that in seconding this proposal, I am seconding the recommendation as it stands. And that, I'm afraid, does not include a community bus, unfortunately, but it doesn't.
Well, Sam has already said it. It's not forced to be a condition, is it? Yeah, I accept if you want to second it in that respect, but I think there should be a little bit more discussion into getting I mean, it's only a community bus going up there to take older people, which is of advantage to oldies.
Edward, would you like to help us with this, so how we can reflect members' concerns without going to...
I'll first, I think Councillor G is eager to speak on this point first. I'll divert that to him if I may first.
Well, I've got Councillor Froggatt first, actually, before you, Gareth.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come back on Councillor Burfoot's point about the community bus. In Bakewell, the community bus does Buxton, Aldi and Waitrose 1 week, Sainsbury's the next week, and then in between time, if anybody wants one, they use the dialer ride community buses. But also the old people's bungalows near me, there are 3 ladies who are all 3 are late 80s, early 90s. They share a taxi and it costs them pennies to get to Bakewell Aldi. So maybe that's a thought. But the community bus will, if they ring up, they will collect them and take them without conditioning it.
Councillor Lees.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree with that, what Councillor Froggatt has just said. I'm a member of the Ashbourne Community Transport, and their bus actually comes and brings people to Sainsbury's in Matlock. So, yeah, it's quite doable. Just to simplify it, why can't this service road just be used as a multi-purpose road, for either buses or deliveries? Does that cause anything in planning terms? Any? Because the one in Aldi and Ashbourne, the delivery road is across the front of the car park, across the front of the store, and it causes no problem. So if that's just got the option to be used as a multi-purpose road rather than just a service road for deliveries, problem solved.
Very sensible suggestion, Stuart, as ever.
Chair, that's what I was trying to get said. Thank you very much.
Before Edward comes back, Councillor G.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, in the beginning I wanted to echo Councillor Slack when he interjected on the bus. We've got here Aldi who want to put an Aldi in Matlock, and from what I read, we haven't had any residents complaining about it. They want Aldi to come to Matlock. We know it's a difficult position in the town. We haven't got any shortage of shopping solutions for people who are travelling by bus in Matlock. As Councillor Barefoot's pointed out, we've got 2 bus stations. One bus stops directly outside Marks and Spencer's and one goes to Sainsbury's. The idea of having buses stopping immediately outside this site on Dale Road, where the Aldi is proposed to go, is just impractical. This is, it's just really a bit silly, if I'm honest. I mean, I can understand the shout out for pedestrians and buses and all that type of thing, but Matlock is already serving the public in many ways for people to get off the bus and go into a shop. This looks like an excellent proposal. I think, did I read that we had 700 people in favour of, had written in favour of this supermarket? It's going to offer the people of Matlock something different that they've been waiting for. It's probably not 10 years, it's about 20 years. I mean, we've had Aldi's and Lidl's in places like Ripley and Belper. We've even got one in Bakewell. But we've got nothing like that in Matlock. We had a Sainsbury's deposited, which cut the town in half, and we had to put a road for them. That was about 20 years ago or whatever. We had to put a bridge over the river. Sainsbury's are the only people who've objected to this. Marks and Spencer's haven't. Where are we going? It's a lovely plan. Let's support it. Let's vote it through and give the people of Matlock some more choice. And one last thing, this is going to be excellent for people from Wirksworth and Matlock Bath coming down the A6 and coming from Bonsall and places like that, so they don't have to drive all the way around the town like that, and it takes them about an hour to get anywhere else. So it'll be fantastic. So please, let's support it, let's get on with it and get on to the next item.
Thank you, Gareth. I do think we need to give this due consideration rather than be rushed into taking an early decision. Do any other members wish to speak? Rather difficult position here. We've had contrasting views on whether we should ask our officers to have further discussions and negotiations in the context of a travel plan which has to be approved with respect to improvements in respect of access arrangements. We've had some suggestions that should take place, but we've also had some suggestions that that's totally unnecessary. So before I'm unsure how to proceed on that, really, because we seem to have two different perspectives.
Chair, my question wasn't actually answered as to whether that road could be used as a dual-purpose road.
Yeah, sorry, Stuart, I wanted to let all members speak first before I asked Edward to come back first on your direct point, and then on if you like, the question as to whether it is possible to have discussions around the content of the travel plan. David, do you want to come in first?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the recommendation, and it's quite clear that the recommendation is subject to securing a full travel plan and off-site biodiversity net gain, as Edward says. So I think we can vote on this, giving officers delegated responsibility for doing what the committee is asking in terms, if it is asking, in terms of sustainable transport options. I don't think we need to do anything more than that.
I think that's true, David, but I'm picking up differences of opinion as to whether what different members mean by sustainable travel and reducing the need to travel by car.
Chair, can I just say again that as seconder of this application for approval, I am seconding it on the basis of what we have in front of us and the recommendation. I want this application to be approved. I want Aldi to come to Matlock. I want them to get on with it as quickly as possible. And if Councillor Slack agrees with me as the proposer, that is what we are proposing. I'm seconding it. If Councillor Slack agrees, we are having a vote on what the recommendation is in front of us. I want this to happen. I want it to happen as soon as possible. We all know that we need some competition in terms of supermarkets in this town. Let's do the right thing as far as I see it and just come to the vote, but it is as proposed.
I totally agree with you. We need to get this through, and it's a very, very good scheme, and everything's all right with it. A little community bus can actually go up there onto the ordinary car park, and without any planning permission or anything. It's only a small community bus. People go with caravanettes. It's not big. So we should not say they can't go up. We should not say they can't go up. But we should not make it a condition either. You can't restrict people to not going there, Sue. I mean, you've probably got a caravanette. You would like to go up there and do your shopping. But it's no bigger. A community bus is only a small bus. And we're not talking about a great big bus. It's only a tiny bus. And you could go up there without any planning permission from the council. So I think we should get on and get it through. Yeah, I agree.
Right, well, before we go to a vote, I'd like Edward Fordin to respond directly to the suggestion from Councillor Lees and also give his take on how the requirement, the condition for a travel plan actually works in practice.
Thank you, Councillor. And thank you, Chair. In terms of advising how to proceed, I mean, at the end of the day, what I'd advise is effectively the recommendation in my report at the end of the day. Ultimately, as with any of the applications, a lot of it comes down to the advice that we receive during the process, and that falls down to a lot of it falls down to our statutory consultees, who have the absolute right to request or not to request specific measures as part of it. I should say as well, to be fair, that with the sort of strategic planning team have set out a swath of potential measures for the full travel plan when that comes forward, and the interim travel plan that is in place already sets out a good deal of sort of potential measures as well. So the condition doesn't need to change sort of even with this other measure if other measures were to come forward. All I'd say is that I think it's we have to deal with the application as presented in terms of the plans that we've got. We can't change the plans as presented, but absolutely, like I say, Alder will be monitoring the situation, and they'll want to get as many customers as they can, and they will, I think during that process of implementing their travel plan and implementing the permission as a whole, they'll be looking and working with any community involvement to get that done, and that, as you say, chances are a lot of that would not require any explicit planning permission from us or breach any other conditions. So I would advise proceeding with the recommendation that's set out, only with the caveat that it needs to reference the obligations as well as the conditions set out as well.
Yeah, Chair, can I just come back, Chair? I totally agree with Officer's recommendations, and we don't have to have a special. If people want to go up there, let them go up there. But we get this through and get it finished. We must not let this slip through his fingers.
Councillor Lees, you got the answer to your question? No. Well, you had an answer. Whether you
I haven't. Can the vehicle go up there or not? Can a bus go up that road or not?
I mean, that, through you, Chair, I mean, that is a point that, we can't insist upon. Whether or not Aldi were willing to permit that or not, that's within their gift, but it's something we can't insist upon. And just to pick up on a point that Edward was saying there, and certainly about part of the debate that's been going on this evening about the travel plan. I mean, at the end of the day, whatever is contained, we've got the draft one, whatever is contained in the substantive document, the final version of it, we are effectively, as the district council, a consultee, it's the county council that sign that off. If the county council didn't see fit to request a local travel network or local community bus to be specifically identified, or if they did, they would have voiced that concern or that point by now. They have not. And I think that the actual mere fact they haven't done that speaks deafening volumes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Chair, I haven't spoken. I totally support the comments from Councillor Sue Burfoot. You're absolutely right, Sue. This is going to be of enormous benefit for people in Darley-Dale, my area. It's not developing a greenfield site. It's going to be, on what was former, as we know, quarry, derelict land, and in the current economic climate, I think hopefully Aldi, through the representative here tonight, have been listening, and I'm sure you will strive to perhaps, hopefully, overcome some of these areas of concern. So in good faith, I want to support the recommendation.
Thank you, David. Councillor Burton, your usual way you've, I think, helped help move the situation on. So we have a proposal, a recommendation to approve as per the recommendations with that minor amendment being proposed and seconded. Can we have all those in favour to please show? Do we have anyone against? We have one abstention, which is me, so that is carried, and the application is approved. So thank you, colleagues, for that that debate, and I think that's a really important decision we've made for Matlock and for the district. We're going to have a short comfort break now. Be back to Bonsall very shortly, but going to move an adjournment for 10 minutes, if we can be back by past, please. Nigel, we're waiting for Helen. Is she? Okay. What about Gareth? Has Gareth gone for his white wine? Right, I'll need to wait for Gareth to come back.
Do you know this thing you wanted me to
Yeah.
read?
Okay.
It's all there. They've got it. Let me try my dulcet tones.
Right, our next application, and residents of Bonsall, please be assured we take all applications equally serious, whether it's in Bonsall or Aldi in Matlock. The next application is in Church Street in Bonsall. It's the site to the rear of number 31. And then we have a number of speakers here. We have three residents, or two residents who are going to speak against the application and one objector. Our first speaker is Brenda Greaves. If you'd like to come up, you as to speak against the application, you have 3 minutes, please.
This is the fourth iteration of plans for this development. The planning officer has listed the drawings by the date they were received by the planning department and not by the numbers on the drawings, on the plans. For clarity, this does need to be resolved. There are inaccuracies in the submission of 7425 by the applicant, once again demonstrating a lack of attention to detail. Firstly, the caravan is stated to have been on the site 1980s to 1990s. The caravan, occupied by Leonard the stockman, was in situ in 1969 when we moved into 23 Church Street and was not there after the 1980s. There have been cattle in the field in the past 12 months, and the land was not inherited from his father, but from his father-in-law. Highway safety. I am aware that highways have not raised concerns, and frankly, I'm astonished. Church Street is a narrow road with no pavements. Greenhill is a footpath running parallel with Church Street. Pedestrian traffic uses Greenhill. This includes children walking to and from school. The footpath terminates at the access to the proposed site. A vehicle either entering or leaving the site has no view of the Greenhill footpath. It is an accident waiting to happen. I would say there are a number of properties in Bonsall for sale with the same amount of accommodation as the proposed development. We have consistently maintained that the proposal is too large for the site, and it's only by moving the building a further 10 metres into the agricultural land that this proposal can be considered. In so doing, the building becomes more intrusive on the setting of the conservation area. And on a personal note, this proposed structure affects the amenity of 23 Church Street, where I live, by overshadowing the greenhouse. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda, very much. That was very concise. Well done. Next speaker, Keir Windsor. Keir is objecting to the proposal. And again, Keir, you've got 3 minutes to speak, please.
I'm speaking on behalf of myself and Daisy Butler. We live at number 35 Church Street. We moved to this house 19 years ago, and our children attended Bonsall School. We don't think permission should be granted for three main reasons. The property is still too large for the space available, and it will appear a lot higher than number 31. It's actually 12 feet higher at the ridge. So it will be overbearing for that property and is wide enough to constrict the space next to it. It will dominate the landscape and affect the outlook and light for ourselves and number 33, and also the outlook from the houses on Ember Lane. The proposed property sits in the bottom of the open green space, the field, which is a conservation area. We think it would substantially alter the character of this conservation area. And one of the main reasons we liked number 35 when we moved there, and very much enjoy today, is the back garden bordering the field with its open feeling next to an unspoiled green space. This will disappear if the development is built. Also, the proposed house will be very close to the access track into the field and will feel like it encloses it, as well as the houses close to it. We don't agree with highways that there's no safety issues for vehicles coming in and out of the property. Church Street is a no-through road, and at school times it can be very busy with frequent jams with parents parking and turning round. The pedestrian pathway parallel to Church Street is used often, especially by parents and children, but it can't be seen properly from a vehicle coming out of the track. Lastly, we know that more homes are needed in the UK, and we understand that planning departments will be under pressure to build new houses, but there are large numbers of houses being used as holiday homes or holiday lets in Derbyshire, which could be permanent homes. We do not believe this planning application should be granted, but if it were to be granted, we'd like to suggest including a condition that it can't be used as a holiday home or a holiday let, and also a condition that the wildflower area in the plans are kept as that. Thank you.
Thank you, Keir, very much again. Next speaker, Jennifer Howarth. You know the what the rules. 3 minutes, please.
Yes. Thank you. Hello there. My name's Jennifer Howarth, and I live on Ember Lane, and we've lived there with my family for 16 years. The proposed development will be directly facing our house. I have 4 points that I'd like to make. The first 2 I've already previously stated in further objections. The first one is being on a blind access to and from the proposed property on Church Street. The Gennell and the road driveway all converge at the same point. This is not visible to traffic driving up Church Street or pedestrians using the Gennell. My second point, I have contacted the land and tree officer, and he has confirmed that no permission was sought to cut down a mature sycamore tree. It was about 2 foot in diameter on the proposed site, and the house will be built on. This area was in a conservation area. Point 3, we are concerned that what is now labelled a wildflower meadow and would in future have a change of use and maybe have a garage, a shed or office space erected right behind our garden and house. And my point 4, the cars in which would be parked behind the wildflower meadow will now create noise to a previously quiet agricultural field. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Jennifer. Now, we do, members of the committee do have a note from the applicant who's not able to be here, which he would have read out. As members of the public, residents from Bonsall aren't able to see that note from the applicant. I think it's only fair that I ask our vice chair to read it out, so you're fully aware as what's being said.
Thanks, Chair. So these are the words of the applicant. The site has been in the family since the 1970s. It was inherited from the applicant's father when he passed away. The applicants are farmers who are diversifying due to health reasons. This property would be a retirement home for them, as having both lived in Bonsall since birth, they would like to remain in the village close to their family and support network. They currently live on a farm in the village. This is no longer suitable for them to spend their retirement in due to various issues to do with accessibility and size. hence the desire to form a new self-build dwelling close to their original roots. The area of land in which the dwelling is proposed historically sited a caravan with a permanent resident who kept an eye on the cattle. This was approximately 1980s to 1990s. This piece of land has not been used for agricultural purposes since then, classed as infill land. The access track stroke driveway is currently used by farm vehicles for access to the applicant's field. There is a public footpath which goes up the track, which would remain open during and post-construction. The use of vehicles in and out of the driveway would be minimal, no more than any other car on Church Street coming out of their driveway. The access road leads only to the applicant's land. We made a previous planning application for a dwelling on the site, which was discussed at a committee meeting on the 8th of October 2024. The application was rejected for various reasons. It was considered that the dwelling was too cramped on the site, the materials were not in keeping with the local vernacular, and there were issues with overlooking number 33 and being too close to number 31's boundary. It was made apparent, however, that if certain changes were made, the proposal of having a dwelling on the site would be acceptable. We took all of the comments on board, and after discussion with the planning officer, Edward Vordin, for the new application, arrived at a new, more acceptable design. The new design is still a 1.5-storey, 3-bedroom dwelling. The bedrooms are on the ground floor, and the living spaces, kitchen, diner and a living room, are in the loft space with steps down to a small area of garden. Changes to the design as a result of the previous application committee comments, neighbours' comments and officers' feedback have been as follows. These are all bullet points. All dark wall cladding and metal roof finish has been replaced with local stone walls and tile roof. The width of the dwelling has been altered to be kept away from the field boundary, and also so that it is more in keeping with the width of the gable end of number 33. We removed the dormer windows and made sure the velox were positioned at a height which would not cause overlooking. We removed the porch and set the dwelling a bit back from the footpath. We reduced the overall height of the dwelling so that it was not taller than number 33 adjacent. We set the dwelling back 2.5 metres from the boundary of number 31. It is also to be noted that there was a boundary error on the plans, whereby the previous drawings did show that a strip of land belonging to number 23 was in the application boundary. This has now been amended. Now the boundary is in the correct position. One window faces into the neighbour's strip of land, though it is obscured by trees, and the other window on this boundary still looks onto the applicant's own land. We have also pushed the house further from the boundary so that the build can happen without any foundations having to encroach onto the neighbour's land. Now that the new design has had the dormer windows removed, there is plenty of roof space for solar panels, an opportunity to make the property an example of sustainable design. We intend for the house to be built using a variety of renewable technologies such as solar PV combined with a ground source heat pump. We also propose an electric vehicle charge point. Materials will be locally sourced and installation levels will exceed the building regulation standards. We have incorporated Swift bricks and propose to have an area of wildflower meadow. We will be replacing the fence with a native species hedge. It would be a new, well-designed dwelling situated within an existing settlement for a local couple to reside and retire in. We have undergone numerous changes throughout the process of trying to get this modest-sized home approved and have cooperated with the planners and responded to feedback along the way. We hope that you can support our application.
Thank you very much for that, Sue. I'm going to ask the case officer, Edward Warden, to introduce the application, and I think, Edward, if you could spell out for members of the committee how this application differs significantly from the previous one, which officers recommended for refusal and the committee agreed to refuse. Over to you, Edward.
Thank you, Chair. Before I do that, I might want to draw members' attention to the lay representations from myself. It's also partly been clarified by the notes raised by the applicant, actually. But I'll read them out insofar as they pertain to what I'm going to present. So, after the finalisation of the committee report, it was brought to the attention of the architect that the blue line boundary on the submitted site plan did not accurately reflect the applicant's land ownership. So, for clarity again, the blue line boundaries purely represents the applicant's other land ownership and not areas where there's development proposed. So amended plans have been submitted to clarify the blue line boundary of the application, and in turn this also brought the siting of the dwelling slightly away from the boundary with the land owned by number 23 Church Street to the west of the site. The amended plans are and will be displayed as part of the committee presentation. It's not considered that the amendment to the plans materially changes the findings or recommendations in the report, nor does it prejudice the representations that have been made during the application process. It's simply that condition 2 will need to be amended to reflect the amendment of plans that have been provided. The other thing I want to draw attention to is that during the course of the application, myself, the case officer and the conservation officer had discussed and assessed the application and sought amendments to address concerns that have been raised both on the original application and also during the course of this application as well. So upon receipt of the amended plans, the conservation officer had advised that whilst the general design of the scheme was now acceptable, there was still some harm identified by the interventions on the roofscape. That includes the roof lights and the solar panels. The conservation officer has now provided written comments on the application as amended, and those are set out within the lay representations there as well. So I can give members a chance to read those. Looks like the majority of members have been able to take that on board. I mean, all I'd add is effectively, so that's the conservation officer's written comments, and they're effectively addressed within the officer report and integrated into that, in both in terms of the design assessment and also incorporated into the planning balance as well, which I'll come on to towards the end of my presentation as well. So, moving on to the actual presentation itself. So this is a full planning permission sought for the apologies, hang on. Where are we at now? There we go. So the proposal seeks to erect one self-built dwelling on the western side of the plot, so the application site itself. Let's get that up there. So the application site is effectively a sort of a T shape with the Bonsall footpath 50, which runs through the site. That's also the proposed site access off Church Street. So the proposed dwelling is located on the left-hand side of that, with the car parking and wildflower meadow located on the right-hand side as you're going up the footpath and access. So as has been raised during the course of this meeting already, a previous application for permission was refused by this committee in October last year, primarily for design reasons. This application provides an amended scheme that has been further amended through the course of the application in response to concerns that have been raised by the council. So partly as per the previous application, the principal development has been accepted under policy S4 of the local plan as the development constitutes infill within Bonsall, which is a 4th tier settlement, and policy S4 provides for that. The proposed development would result in less than substantial harm to the character of the Bonsall conservation area due to the interventions on the roofscape, which, for the reasons set out in the Conservation Officer's comments, have been considered out of character, particularly for Bonsall, considering its otherwise relatively blank roofscapes. However, in that context, the Conservation Officer has raised no objections with the rest of the design insofar as it relates to the layout, the massing, and the use of materials, which now include. Let's have a look. There you go. So you've got, stone, sort of random core stone, and stone coins as well. So the proposed dwelling is located uphill from 31 Church Street, and this has been set back from the boundary when compared to the previous application. It's set back by 2.5 metres. So this reduces the potential impacts on number 31 to the point where there's not any sort of significant impacts or adverse impacts on outlook or daylight, despite the fact that it's in its uphill setting. The dwelling would have sufficient separation from the properties to the east by virtue of the boundary treatments for this property and also the neighbouring properties, as well as the separation with the access in between. So there wouldn't be a significant impact on amenity with regards to the daylight or outlook relating to the properties to the east. With regards to the sort of new fenestration arrangements, the dwelling would have windows facing east towards number 33 Church Street. So that's in the bottom right corner of this image. That's effectively the front elevation of the proposed dwelling. So these, as raised before, would be separated by a boundary wall initially, and then the access, and then the boundary walls, and also associated outbuildings and the rest of it with. That's the separation effectively between this site and the neighbouring properties, and it's also located sort of perpendicular to those as well. And also should be borne in mind that the existing access is already a public right of way, so it's bearing in mind the level of existing footfall, public footfall in that location. The roof lights and windows on the west elevation, those face predominantly onto the open field to the west, but as it's been identified through the course of the application, part of this is onto land owned by number 23 as well. The roof lights are set at a minimum height of 1.7 metres above the finished floor level, so they wouldn't be considered to have any particular impacts on privacy. And the windows on the ground floor, one of them is to be obscure glazed, and the other one is predominantly screened by green boundary treatment effectively, and also maintains a reasonable separation distance with the properties to the west. In terms of the access, as previously, the local highway authority have not raised any objections, and indeed it was not refused previously on highway grounds. With regards, so just as a whole, whilst there's an identified harm to the conservation area, this has to be weighed up against the public benefits, and the harm that has been identified is considered to be on the lower end of the scale, and is considered to be outweighed by the public benefit of the scheme in the context of the District Council's lack of a 5-year housing land supply, which needs to be afforded significant weight in favour of providing new houses, with some additional weight to self-build houses as well. Particularly as well, it's some of the provisions relating to the renewable energy sources. So the solar panels, whilst not as typical for the Bonsall conservation area, the addition of solar panels and other renewable energy sources has to be afforded weight in favour of it as well, in compliance with our PD7 policy as well. So ultimately, the application has to be assessed in line with the NPPF's tilted balance, which directs that unless there's significant and demonstrable adverse impacts that would outweigh the benefits of the scheme, it should be recommended for approval, subject to the conditions that are set out within the report.
Thank you, Edward. Moving into questions now. I'm going to ask my own question first, if you don't mind. The Conservation Officer suggested that the design of the roofscape should be reconsidered. Was that put to the applicant?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so originally the comments that have been provided, both verbally, the comments in terms of the amendments that were sought during the course of the application came through me following discussions with the Conservation Officer, who had originally identified a number of additional concerns, as well as the presence of the roof interventions as well. It previously included more interventions and also a sort of a different mix, including sort of solar panels and roof lights on both roofs as well, sort of both roof slopes. So, you know, whilst this has improved it, you know, granted there's still a level of harm identified during, you know, in the sort of related to the roofscape. But as I say, in the context of the wider application, the harm that's identified is relatively limited on the lower end of the scale and less than substantial.
The question I was getting at, Edward, was does the Conservation Officer's concluding remarks still stand? That the roofscape design should be considered, or has that changed? Is that still the Conservation Officer's opinion?
Thank you, Chair. I think the Conservation Officer's comments would still stand insofar as, you know, overall they would always recommend to try and pursue, you know, no harm to the conservation area effectively. I'm not in a position to sort of force that if ultimately the applicants put forward the scheme that they want to put forward. We've given them a chance to amend the scheme, which they've done, and I've considered that on balance, considering the public benefits, you know, resulting from the provision of a new self-built dwelling, just in the context of our housing supply, and also the relatively limited harm, or they've effectively narrowed down the potential impacts on the conservation area. I've considered that on balance it can be approved or outweigh the impacts in that regard. So whilst it's always going to be the preference, bearing in mind it's a consultation response, their duty is in, and also the District Council's duty is to pay regard to preserving and enhancing the character of the conservation area. So that will be at the forefront of their comments. So yeah, I believe they'll still stand in that regard. But in fulfilling that duty and applying policy, both national and local, this has to be done in the context of weighing it up against the public benefits, both of provision of new housing and also provision of, you know, particularly sort of renewable energy sources.
Councillor Hughes, David.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Edward, for a very good explanation of what's going on here. 3 different areas again. Heat pump noise. Where's the heat pump going to go?
If you bear with me a second, Chair, I can refer to the site plan.
Is it up at the top there? But on the.
Oh yes, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it'll be away from away from all the other buildings.
Yeah. So we bring up I've come a bit more prepared this time in terms of having more detailed plans. So it's not specified on the actual site plan itself, so I can have that clarified. Yeah, it doesn't appear to be fair. It does not appear to actually be sort of specified as the location of it on the plans that are to be approved in that regard. So that's something that can be clarified or conditioned as well.
I think that probably needs to be conditioned because if it's on that north wall, that's got a big window above it, has it not, overlooking the fields? In which case there would be not.
Sorry, Councillor, which?
If the heat pump is furthest away from the property, it's on a wall with a big window at first floor level, is it not? Yeah.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Second point. Conservation Officer's view of the roof. scape. Now, there's an issue about the colours of various things. So are the tiles, what colour are the tiles going to be?
Through each, so what I would say is the application does include, or the recommendation includes a condition to secure the samples of the materials as well. So it's something that'll be reviewed in detail to get the exact colour. So it's something that will be reviewed at that stage effectively. But ultimately they'll be in the more sort of darker recessive colour. I mean, it should be specified as well on here as to, I mean, it won't specify the exact sort of shade in that regard, but ultimately it'll be a tiled roof in that sense, and dark tiles will be used. So it's, like I say, I mean, it'll be something that the conservation officer reviews in terms of seeking the appropriate tiles at the discharge of condition stage if it were to be granted.
Can I ask that the solar panels are black, with no silver on them, and that the tiles are of a colour that is will allow those to recess into the tiles, so you can't tell that there are solar panels there. Would that be appropriate, do you think?
I think it's something that the conservation officer will be seeking as part of discharging it in any case. But and like I say, they'll part of it in terms of the level of sort of the impact attributed. Part of that will have been in considering the fact that they put forward integrated solar panels rather than attached solar panels. So I think it's absolutely things that the conservation officer will be looking to require to be in order for it to be acceptable to discharge those.
Right, thank you. And the third thing is really about the granularity of Bonsall and whether this building, in its close proximity to other buildings, is of a similar granularity, because I think that is a real conservation issue. Whether if it fits it, if the overall landscape is one of buildings being close together, like as these are going to be, is that consistent with the rest of Bonsall?
Thank you, Ken. In terms of the layout and the density and all that, I think as far as I'm aware and the conservation officers are aware, it matches up, broadly speaking, with the grain of Bonsall. Yeah. I mean, it does change. I mean, generally speaking, Bonsall is a more tightly knit pattern of development. It does expand, and the density does sort of decrease further out and further east of this site, but it's not necessarily something that we would look to or encourage to be replicated, because the Bonsall Conservation Character Appraisal actually identifies those areas as more negative factors in the conservation area. So this grain and density is is typical of what you see insofar as it being a detached sort of single dwelling in a relatively tight plot.
Yeah.
I've just reminded colleagues we've gone past that bewitching hour, so we need an extension of time, please, for half an hour. Anyone prepared? Who shall I choose? Councillor Dobbs, you're nearest. And Councillor Lee's on the other side. All those in favour, please show. All those not in favour. That's one. That, unfortunately for you, Lucy. That's half an hour at a time. Right. Any further questions, guys? Yes, Councillor Malmstrom.
Thank you, Chair. One of the speakers mentioned the possibility of conditioning against use as a holiday let. I don't know if that is within our powers, but is it? And or is it possible to condition, the Derbyshire clause arrangement, which would keep this property as restricted to long-term residents of the Dales?
Through you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. So, in principle, technically, it is feasible to condition that that the dwelling not be used effectively for holiday lets. However, I'd caution, I guess, that it can be very difficult to enforce and also define the use as a holiday let and what we'd consider to be an acceptable use and not. Bearing in mind also that depending on the level of use that a holiday let sees, by way of example, if someone was letting out their existing house for sort of 10 calendar days in a year, that sort of thing, that likely would fall within the remit of their existing use of the house. Whereas if it was a lot more of an intense use, that would likely result in a material change of use to something that was materially different from a dwelling house, and that's something we can enforce without the need of a condition, because it would require planning permission to change into what we'd call a sui generis wholly let, meaning that it's very different from a normal house, if you will. So it is technically a condition that you can put on, but any condition that needs to be applied has to pass the 6 tests, and being part of those is being necessary and also precise, exactly when you're going, and how you're going to enforce it too, how that's going to be dealt with. So that's why I haven't recommended that it be included on the list of conditions. The scope to do so, but I would generally advise against it, because I think we have appropriate measures of dealing with change of use that would be intense and result in impacts beyond the scope of a new dwelling.
And sorry, does that apply also to the Derbyshire clause?
Is that in terms of limiting who can actually occupy it? One thing I should clarify actually is that because they have applied on the basis of it being a self-built dwelling, which provides an exemption under the biodiversity net gain legislation, to fall within that definition, they have to build it for themselves and live in it effectively themselves. So it will be, the dwelling is for them. That's their primary purpose. We can't, beyond that, we can't condition who lives. It's not feasible to condition who lives in it, or necessarily appropriate. It's very difficult to tie who actually occupies a particular dwelling, again, primarily because of difficulties in enforcing it.
Sorry, I was talking about sale on rather than occupation.
Again, I don't think it's something we can apply through a planning condition anyway. And again, it's not something I've considered necessary for this dwelling in particular. And same goes for any of the other dwellings. It's not something that presents any sort of policy conflict inherently anyway, in terms of who it's sold on to. The same rules apply in terms of they'd have to use it as a dwelling, and then anything that resulted in a material sort of change of use or anything like that can be dealt with through enforcement through the usual processes.
I think I do need to advise members that while I share Councillor Millstrom's sentiments, we don't have a policy in our local plan on which to base such a restrictive occupancy clause, much though we wish we had, except in Wirksworth. So I think we'd be exceeding our statutory powers if we attempted to place one on. Councillor Peacock.
Similarly, and before I ask my question, I just want to say to the members of the public that the reason I'm not asking about traffic, because I see why people are concerned, is because if highways have passed it, then we can't really refuse it on that basis. But I was going to ask about this wildflower meadow. Is that so in condition 5, it talks about all soft landscaping, first planting and seeding season. Does that cover the wildflower meadow, and will it be enforced? If they don't do it, will it be enforced? That's what I'm asking.
Through you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. Yes, in effect, so to all of the above. So that soft landscaping condition, so I guess effectively there's 2 conditions involved in securing this. So the first one relates to condition 3 in terms of just clarifying exactly the soft landscaping and hard landscaping they're putting forward, that down to the level of sort of the species mix, making sure it's appropriate. Once that's approved, then condition 5 kicks in terms of when they need to actually carry it out. And yeah, the condition covers for 5 years in terms of it gives them a responsibility to maintain the approved landscaping for a 5-year period. That's the standard wording for our conditions in that regard, because beyond that, obviously, it gets a lot harder to control and enforce. But yes, that wording, it's been considered in the past to pass the tests of reasonableness in that regard. And so, yes, we can enforce it on that basis if they don't carry out the wildflower meadow. So it'll have to be retained in line with that condition.
Any further questions? If not, we're going to go into debate. We have a recommendation to approve, subject to a number of conditions. I'm going to again make a comment at just the beginning of the debate that I do share the conservation area officer's concerns on the roofscape. Well, I can accept there's a public benefit for the installation of solar panels. I do agree with the question that Councillor Hughes raised, that these need to be seen as recessed tiles, not as solar panels, and there is a marked distinction between the two. So personally, I'd like to see that specified in the condition that we are looking at recessed tiles, and there's no as distinct from panels. Personally, I don't see any public benefit arising from the installation of roof lights. I think that's a private benefit. I can't see any public benefit at all from that, so I'm a little bit disappointed that there hasn't been a negotiation with the applicant to remove the roof lights to ensure that the design complies as closely as possible with the conservation area assessment. But there we are. We have the recommendation in front of us. So would anyone like to move a recommendation or an alternative? Councillor G.
Yeah, when you look at our local plan and the new policies or in the local plan review, this sort of fits exactly within some of the policies that we've been putting forward in terms of providing additional houses in tier 4 or 5 settlements. So basically it increases the sustainability of places like Bonsall, which is exactly what we want. And also, I think it falls in line with the additional policies on environment in terms of solar panels. It's something we've actually been asking for at all the meetings that I've been attending, certainly from certain parts of the council. So this is local people who are trying to improve the village in terms of available properties, and they want to live in it themselves. So I just can't see any problem with it. Officers are recommending it. You're always going to have a little bit of give and take in terms of when you're trying to build something modern in a historic village like Bonsall and fall in line with conservation officers. There's always going to be something that's not quite perfect when you're trying to come up with a modern building that fits in all the building regulations and all our new requirements in terms of insulation and such like. And in terms of the roof lights, I presume they want them so there's some light in the building, because otherwise it'd be too dark. That's why you have roof lights. It's natural. So yeah, I'd definitely like to move and recommend to accept this application.
Thank you, Gareth. Anyone want to second? Councillor Hughes?
Yes, I'll second it. I think Gareth summed up very well. And for the same reasons, if it matches the granularity of Bonsall, then we would have to accept that the building's going to be very highly constrained on its site, as this one is, and will be likely to be very close to others. And as Councillor G says, this is typical of landscape in the higher villages on hillsides in Derbyshire Dales, and I don't think we should look askance at doing something that furthers that in this particular case. I think the wildflower meadow needs to be, the wildflower area needs to be safeguarded, and I am concerned that it could be used in the future as a holiday let, but I think we'd have to understand that if it's self-build, then it has to be a principal residence, and therefore that is to some extent safeguarded. In terms of the solar panels and the roof lights facing northeast, as I understand it, so they're not going to reflect, they shouldn't reflect too much sunlight. In terms of the panels, as long as they're a recessive colour, I think if you look from any distance, they will tend to disappear and not be not be a significant factor. So I would very much like to second this and hope that it passes. Thank you.
Any further contributions? No? You don't want to come back, Gareth, are you again? No, it's moved and seconded. All those in favour of the recommendations as set out. Those against? And an abstention? An abstention. So that is carried and the application is approved. Thank you, colleagues. Right, I think we've got another consider our final two items. So the final planning application, 5.4, is at Ednaston on the Elderslie Lane. It's for some floodplain restoration works, and we do have Ethan Glover, who's the agent, who's going to speak on behalf of the applicant in favour of the application. And Ethan, you have 5 minutes to address committee. And thank you for your forbearance in suffering the previous 3 items.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. My name is Ethan Glover. I'm the agent speaking on behalf of the applicant, Stand One LLP, in support of the planning application for river and floodplain restoration at a reach of the Brailsford Brook on the Ednaston estate. The applicant's been working closely with the Environment Agency to develop the proposals in order to deliver the best outcomes for nature and the environment. Support has also been provided from the Wild Trout Trust, demonstrating that the proposal will deliver significant environmental and ecological benefits within the Brailsford Brook and the surrounding area. No objections to the scheme have been received from statutory consultees nor the wider public. The existing watercourse has been subject to significant historic modification, creating a disconnection from the natural floodplain. This has resulted in low-order floods being contained within the river channel rather than spreading more widely across the valley floor, ultimately meaning that there is excessive lateral erosion along segments of the watercourse where there are now thin strips between the main channel and the ponds. Ad hoc protection measures have been put in place over the years to try and prevent the erosion from occurring, to protect the ponds and reduce flooding within the site area, but this proposal represents a long-term solution and provides a huge number of environmental and ecological benefits. The new proposed channel seeks to protect the existing ponds and pools from any breach due to further erosion and aims to encourage flooding back within the natural floodplain in the appropriate place for the benefit of creating a riparian habitat. Continued erosion of the existing ponds could lead to a disastrous breach in the embankments, which would cause significant environmental damage and could threaten infrastructure downstream. In addition to improving flood resilience, the proposal will deliver significant environmental benefits by vastly improving the number and quality of habitats within the brook, where significant regard has been extended to the native population of wild brown trout. The increase in spawning habitats by the introduction of suitable spawning gravels will have a significant positive effect on the whole Sutton Brook catchment. The increased variety in aquatic habitat will also provide improved oxygenation and decreased sedimentation, which will positively affect the invertebrate population in the local area. Bypassing the weir will also significantly improve access for migratory species such as the native brown trout, whilst allowing the transport of sediment downstream to replenish aquatic habitats beyond the immediate area. The wetland created by the proposal will increase floodwater storage to reduce the impact of space on the downstream catchment, whilst also providing nesting opportunities for wetland birds such as lapwing, snipe and oystercatcher, which have been observed in the local area. The landscape around the new channel will also be maintained to attract larger numbers of migrating avian species, and as a sinuous, dynamic and evolving habitat, the wetland will provide a home to a variety of species at various times of the year, providing refuge in a habitat that faces significant global pressure. I've reviewed the Officer's report and consider it to be robust and well written. We welcome the conclusions and recommendations made, which confirm that the proposed development would not result in any adverse impact on the character of the surrounding area or landscape, and that permission should be granted for the proposal. The proposed development includes the retention of all trees with protection to exclude works within their root protection areas. Additionally, all areas of hedgerow are maintained, and the proposal will deliver a biodiversity net gain of over 37% in terms of habitat units and over 20% increase in watercourse units, far exceeding the mandatory 10% net gain requirement. To conclude, this proposal has been assessed as acceptable in principle and has no notable adverse effects. It delivers significant ecological and environmental benefits and seeks to revert the existing watercourse back into its natural position at the bottom of the valley. In line with your officer's recommendations, I urge you to support this proposal and grant planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you, Ethan. That was very helpful. I found that a very informative presentation. Right, Chelsea Johnson, you're going to present the report to us. Again, thank you for patiently sitting through the previous applications. I hope you found them interesting and instructive, as I'm sure we will now from your presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Planning permission is sought for river and floodplain restoration works for a reach of the Brailsford Brook. The application site comprises a small section of the brook and adjacent land known as Long Meadows Field, which is set within the privately owned Etniston estate. The site itself includes modified grassland, a single watercourse which forms the brook, woodland and a number of individual trees. The site is not subject to any ecological or heritage designations. And in terms of the development itself, it includes the realignment of a small section of the existing channel and the restoration of the natural floodplain. As the agent has pointed out, the brook has been subject to channel realignment, flow abstraction and disconnection from the floodplain, which has caused a number of flooding issues within the estate. The proposed works will reinstate the floodplain and provide a number of biodiversity benefits and reduce erosion along the existing channel. And you can just see the site location on the screen. It's just north, 1 kilometre north of the Etniston. This is just a photograph of the existing channel, and you can see that there's, along the banks, there's evidence of erosion. The applicant and their design team have been working closely with the Environment Agency in developing the proposed designs to ensure the best possible outcome for the environment. The development itself involves excavation of circa 2,000 cubic metres of soil from Long Meadows Field to create the new channel. So on the screen you can appreciate it's very difficult to see, but you can see the existing channel. This image shows the proposed new channel through the adjacent Long Meadows Field. This is just some images of the field where the new channel is proposed. So the development will involve the excavation of soil, and it will be reused to block up existing sections of the old channel. 750 cubic metres of gravel will be brought to site in order to create 25 new features within the new channel. These new features include gravel islands, riffles, fans, point bars, all which provide a number of environmental and ecological benefits. And in relation to the planning policy context, national and local planning policy emphasises the need to ensure sustainable development to improve the quality of the natural environment. Policy S1 goes on to say development must conserve and enhance the local area by encouraging and protection of natural resources, including water, by promoting water efficiency and water conservation. The proposed development seeks to restore and enhance the existing watercourse and is considered to comply with Policy S1. Policy S4 advises that outside of development boundaries, the Council will seek to ensure that development protects and, where possible, enhances the landscape's character and distinctiveness. The majority of the proposed development relates to engineering works required to reroute the existing channel, and it is considered that the existing landscape character would be maintained. In terms of impact on ecological aspects and biodiversity, Policy PD3 seeks to protect and manage where possible, enhance biodiversity by ensuring development will not result in any harm. The Derbyshire Wildlife Trust has reviewed the proposals and the associated ecological appraisal and confirmed that the restoration works proposed will provide a number of ecological benefits, such as habitat diversity, increased biodiversity, as well as floodplain connectivity, and have no objections to the proposal. In relation to highways, obviously traffic generation and car parking is not relevant to the proposal. However, the construction of the proposed works has potential to cause some disruption within the local area. However, overall, this is considered to be minimal and will be temporary in nature. The Highway Authority have no objection to the proposed development from a highway safety point of view, subject to the inclusion of a condition requiring the submission of a construction management plan prior to the commencement of development. And in relation to flood risk and drainage, development proposals that reduce the risk of flooding are encouraged and supported by Policy PD8. And I think, the agent provided a really good background to the proposed development, so I'll not reiterate all the points that has been raised in terms of the rationale for the proposed development. And I'd just like to reiterate all of the statutory consultees have raised no objection to the proposed development, including the Local Leaf Flood Authority and the Environment Agency. And just to sum up, the proposed development will deliver significant environmental and ecological benefits, and it is considered that the proposal complies with all relevant policies of the development plan, neighbourhood plan, and the MPPF, and is therefore recommended to grant permission subject to the conditions set out within Section 8 of the officer's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chelsea. Well done. Perhaps someone after the meeting can explain to me what a riffle is exactly. Over to members' questions then. Councillor Slack.
Have the environmental agency done most of the designs, or has it been designed by the applicant?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Has the environment agency done most of the design, or has it been designed by the applicant?
I believe the applicant has been working closely with the Environment Agency and drawn up the detailed designs. I believe a number of options were considered, but this option was considered the most appropriate.
So they've got that. Thank you. Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Dobbs.
Just a quick one. Out of curiosity, when in a normal planning application, you consult the neighbours. When you're dealing with a stream, what are your neighbours?
Good point. I don't believe there was no neighbours consult it. I believe it's within privately owned land. I don't have. I think the closest dwelling is quite a distance away.
What I really meant, are they consulting the people where the stream goes? Is it relevant? I mean, this is new territory for me.
No, it's not. I mean, basically, if you're dealing with something that runs through private land or one ownership, even though it's done in collaboration with a number of bodies, a number of groups, effectively the requirement of the Act is you don't have to consult widely on that. Now, obviously, if there were properties that immediately run cheek by jowl with the site or the estate, then yes, you'd consult them as a matter of course with any regular application. But I know this is, it's not uncommon to happen, but certainly it probably hasn't happened here for some time, if at all, to Bonsall. So obviously it's new territory or recently refreshed territory for this council, but it is perfectly acceptable to go down the route as we've done and as we've assessed it.
Any further questions? If not,
Chair, can I move? It was an excellent report, Chelsea, and the the presentation that was made to the committee, the fact that there's no objections, I have confidence, and I think hopefully most members do, in supporting the officer recommendation.
before we go there, would you like to move another 15 minutes extension, David, please?
Move the extension, please.
Councillor Lees. All those against? Yeah. That's 2. All those in favour? That's carried. Right, do we have a second?
Can I move that, Chair? Sorry? Yeah, can I move that? I think it's wonderful.
Yours, second, Councillor Burton has moved.
Second it, sorry.
Second.
Can't second it, Chair. I think it's a wonderful scheme and I'm fully supportive of it. Thank you.
Any further contributions, Councillor G?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank Ethan and Chelsea. I think planning's in good hands in the next generation, so I think they've done a fabulous job. It's way beyond my head in terms of diverting rivers, but I'm sure, I trust what I've been told. Thank you.
You can buy them a drink, a glass of white wine. Then. Further contributions, Councillor Lees.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, fully support this. Know the area well. It'll be a benefit to the community that surrounds that area as well. So it'll be a nice little feature as you come down the A52 as well. So you can just look to one side. It'll all good, and it's nice to see we've had comments from the Environment Agency as well.
I think all 3 speakers have summarised the feelings of the committee, I guess, but we'll take a vote now. All those in favour, please show. This is unanimous, so that is carried and the application is approved. Right, final item this evening is item 6. That's the report on the status of planning appeals. Sean, is there anything you want to ask the committee to note in introducing this?
Just 2 particular decisions that were probably of relevance to 1 or 2 members. North Park Farm in Dale. 2 appeals, one for the erection of an agricultural barn, which was the less contagious issue. These were enforcement appeals. And, it was an informal hearing on the application, sorry. And the second application about the activity of an equine business from the same location, that was the application that was dismissed. So, whilst they both weren't dismissed, the prevalent one, the one that had most concerns from residents and members, was the one that was actually dismissed.
Can I thank Sean for those comments? You're absolutely right, and it was a big relief and a good outcome for Darlingdale Town Council as well as the 3 ward members.
Any questions on item 6? If not, would someone like to move we receive this report? Councillor Dobbs, Councillor Archer, do you want to speak? Would you like to speak, Rob? No?
No.
All in favour, please show. And that is unanimous. That's noted, and that concludes our business for this evening. So have a safe journey home. Good luck to all those standing on May the 1st.
Chair,